Okay, bonne soirée à tous et bienvenue à cette rencontre du Comité de dérogation pour la Ville d'Ottawa. Welcome everyone to this meeting of the Committee of Adjustment for the City of Ottawa. The Committee of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial tribunal appointed by City Council to make decisions on certain types of applications under the Planning Act, notably consent applications and minor variances, but also permissions from time to time. My name is Anne Tremblay, and I'm here. I will be chairing this hearing this evening. And with me this evening are three of my fellow panel members, Ms. Kathleen Willis, Mr. Colin White, and Mr. Scott Hindle. Also with us tonight is our very capable committee staff that enables all of these hearings. And with us tonight, we have our acting secretary treasurer, Mr. Matt Garnett. We have two of our coordinators, Ms. Emily Byers and Mandy Nguyen, I believe is with us this evening as well.
She's not, Madam Chair.
Oh, she's not? Any other? Okay, so is she on holidays? Maybe that's what's going on. Okay.
Yeah, she is.
Okay, all right. No other coordinators?
We have Alexander Jones with us tonight.
Ah, Mr. Jones, welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, great. So with that, then just to please take note that this this hearing is being video conferenced and is being live streamed on YouTube. And the video is archived along with the agenda on the city's webpage. So if you would like to access that later, you can in fact go back and have a look if you need to review anything or for whatever reason. Before we begin, we've got a few things that we need to make clear in terms of what this committee can and can't do. So the development is complex within the city, and there's a lot of issues that often surround development. Now, this committee has a very narrow focus, however, and so we will only really be dealing with aspects that are directly related to the minor variance. Sometimes our minor variances are attached to site plan control as well. So there's a site plan control process that may go ahead in advance of the minor variances. We can only really speak to what's in the minor variance application. Issues with regards to site plan control would be decided outside of our jurisdiction and to be taken up in another manner. We also don't talk about noise pollution, property maintenance, effects on property values. We don't talk about prosecution for illegal construction. We won't entertain any personal comments about either the applicants, the owners, or anyone taking part in these proceedings. So we would ask that you treat everyone with respect. And finally, we will not, we cannot continue to hear an application if we find that either the relief required is greater than what was in the application, or that in fact there's additional minor variances that are required. In those cases, we need to adjourn the application, allow for a full circulation, and then bring it back to a later hearing of the committee. So as part of the statutory public notification requirements, each applicant is required to post a sign on the property and then file a statutory declaration with the committee about that sign posting. So tonight, what we're going to be doing is a solemn oath or affirmation in order to ensure that we can hear your applications. If we can't get that oath or affirmation, then we have to adjourn your application. With respect to quorum, we have 4 members tonight. If for whatever reason we lose a member to technical difficulties, we can continue. If we lose 2, then we'll need to try and reestablish quorum. So also in terms of the hearing process, so tonight we've got a variety of applications. So there's a few that we're going to fast track where we're simply going to go to asking questions. And we have a couple for which we're going to ask for presentations. So as the applicant in the fast track stream, we won't ask for a presentation. Committee members will ask questions. Then we open it up to the public. And then after that, the committee deliberates and makes a decision. On the presentations, we will ask you to present your proposal And then from there, we can then ask clarifying questions and then open it up to the public and then again, deliberate. So if and anyone, I have a speakers list, so anyone who wants to speak during the public portion of the hearing on an application, you're welcome to do so. I'll start with my speakers list and then go to the public and see if there's anyone else who would like to address the committee. In those cases where I don't have you on my list, I will ask you to provide me with your name. I may ask you to spell it, and also your municipal address. So once all of that is done, the committee does make a decision, and we can make a decision orally, which is either typically to deny or grant an application. But in all cases, there is, from 10 days of the hearing, a formal written decision that's then provided, outlining the panel's reasoning on their decision. And all decisions in the committee are subject to a 20-day appeal period, upon which time a decision can be appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal for a fee. And those are my comments. We can now go to a couple of items of business. We have a few minutes to adopt. So I'm going to do this one at a time. So I need a mover for the minutes of April 20th. Do I have a mover to adopt? Mr. Hindle, seconded by Ms. Willis. Those are adopted. May 4th, do I have a mover? Mr. Hindle, seconded by Mr. White. And for May 18th, do I have a mover? Ms. Willis, seconded by Mr. Hindle. Very good. We've got all of our minutes taken care of. The other thing we need to do is declarations of conflict of interest. Does anybody on the panel have a conflict of interest with any of the applications on our agenda or any of the agendas of the other panels that heard today? Nope. All right. So for the record, there are no conflict of interest issues. So we don't have anybody coming forward. That's great. The next thing we're going to do is talk about adjournment requests. We have one that has specifically been requested by staff, and that application is just bear with me, number 7, which is for 614 Kesagami Lane. I'm looking for Mr. Danemi.
Hi, Madam Chair.
Yes, hello. We don't see you. Did you want to come on camera?
My camera doesn't seem to be working right now.
Okay. All right, that's fine. All right, so we've understood from staff that they're looking for an adjournment on this application simply because they don't believe that they have the complete information they need in order to ensure that there aren't any additional zoning deficiencies. You're aware of that?
Yeah, so we have identified another minor variance needed, so I'm okay with adjourning sine die.
All right, well, thank you very much then. Any questions from the committee? No questions from the committee, great. So is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak either for or against the adjournment request, sine die? All right, I'm not seeing anybody come forward. So then all those in favor of an adjournment, sine die for this application? All right, for the record, the application is adjourned unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Dunamy. We'll see you, I guess, not in a few months, I guess.
Yep. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. We have a couple of concerns with other applications. So I'd like to call number 1 down, which is for Barossa Kane Road, and I'm looking for Mr. Bond.
Hi there. I'm just going to start my video. Hi there. Good evening, Madam Chair.
Good evening, Mr. Bond. So we have, we've read the staff report, and staff has quite a few concerns regarding where you are in the site plan control process, that it's in fact just out of the gate. The fact that there's also provisional consent and no conditions from what we understand have been cleared. Maybe that's going too far, but I think that that's where we are. So Mr. Bond, we were thinking perhaps we should be adjourning this to a later meeting or sine die.
So I appreciate the concern, Madam Chair, and we did discuss this with the applicant. The issue that the applicant has is that they have the lands under agreement of purchase and sale, and there's a business decision to be made as to whether or not they can proceed with this agreement. Because in order to accommodate the car wash format, which is very much prototypical, they need to get this variance granted. Otherwise, there's really no way to make the site work. So unfortunately, there's a bit of a business complication that comes into play here. Otherwise, I do completely understand the notion of waiting for a site plan to advance to a later stage. In fact, it's usually our advice to do that.
Well, staff has actually pointed out that I think there's a comment about even the use at this point. Have you read the staff report, Mr. Ball?
I've read the staff report. There's a comment about the, sorry.
All right, let me
Okay.
just see if we can find it. We were looking
Sure.
at this earlier and we were a little bit
I had a,
concerned about
yeah.
it. So
Okay.
it's in under additional comments where it says
Yes.
that the site plan submitted as part of the application is subject to change
yes,
through the process, and that it may be determined that the proposed uses or building of the, hang on, let me turn the page, proposed size cannot be supported on the site. So those sound like some pretty outstanding issues.
well, I don't understand. I see that now. I'm not sure why they had included the commentary, the proposed use. It is a permitted use under the zoning bylaw. I suppose what they could be saying is, for example, there could be some engineering constraints, for example, outflow of water that may not be able to be accommodated. I suppose that's what they're talking about in terms of accommodating the use, but it's not an issue of, permission. It's really a issue that relates to site plan application and technical
All right, so
matters.
I'm going to ask Ms. Scleroso, sorry, maybe to enlighten us here. I know you've probably talked to the site plan control planner. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I met with Katie Morfitt, who is the file lead for the site plan control approval application. And Katie and I both met with the agent, and we just we wanted to make clear that regardless of the decision by the committee this evening, that we're really only looking at the area of the building. Even though the size of the building and, even though the application included site plan, a proposed site plan, we wanted to make very clear that if the variance was granted for that additional floor area, that it had absolutely no bearing on any other step or approval in the site plan approval process. So if staff later determine that the use can't be supported on the site for any other reason that wouldn't have been evaluated as part of the minor variance review, then we just wanted to protect ourselves in that way or make that very clear.
So in your opinion, the application is premature to be dealt with at this particular point in time?
We thought that it was, yes. Just because we'd really only be looking at increasing the footprint of the building and without having any more information about what would be permitted under site plan approval. We just basically I was reviewing the application, essentially just looking at it as a 300 square foot building increasing to 476 square feet without any sort of influence from the site plan.
All right, okay, and so it represents a fairly significant increases on top of that, right? So we're actually suggesting we're going to 513 over the 300 square meters. So any questions from the panel members? Yes, Ms. Willis.
Yes, a question for Mr. Bond. Sorry.
Yeah, no
Mr.
problem.
Bond. You were saying that it's sort of a template that's used for this particular facility, and that in order to proceed with the business deal, you'd need some certainty that this is going to get approved, or else the deal could fall through, is my interpretation of what you said. Does that pertain only to building size, in that they're not flexible at all as to building size, or would that also pertain to site layout? And if the latter, I'm wondering how this gives you an advantage just to proceed with the variance for the building size.
So good question. First of all, to clarify, I know Madam Chair mentioned 513 square meters. There was some back and forth on this with staff. So the actual measurement for Ontario Building Code purposes to the outside of the insulation on the foundation walls is 513 square meters. The actual area of the GFA pursuant to the zoning bylaw has been clarified as 476 meters squared, whereas the bylaw permits 300, just to clarify that. To Ms. Willis's point, the applicant has tried various orientations of this building on the site. It only really makes sense in this orientation for various reasons of safety and traffic turning movements. That being said, the applicant's certainly open to, nudging the building left or right, or, east or west, that would be, or north or south slightly, to account for any engineering or safety issues that may come up during the site plan review process. But this is their prototypical model, in that the business works based on this building design. It's been built in various locations, and my understanding from the applicant is that the building design is fixed essentially, and they have to find sites that it will work on. So this site, we believe, subject to whatever site plan comments come back in the coming weeks or months, that we think this site is going to work for us in terms of size, its location. But once again, we want to get over the hurdle of understanding whether this size limitation of 300 square meters can be overcome through an application for minor variance. And there is a business decision to be made with respect to the transaction and whether it can continue going forward.
Just a follow-up question. If this site plan is not yet to any degree of certainty, if this variance is granted, I need staff to remind me what that means in terms of future development. So let's say this development, let's say we approve the variance, the deal does not go through. Does that variance survive the failure of that deal, or is it tied to the land? Can staff, I guess it would not. Sure.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll look into that. My understanding is that it's for this specific application only. So if you're asking whether another owner or purchaser, potential purchaser, can take advantage of a variance of that size, I don't believe so.
So
can we,
in order to ensure that it doesn't survive, doesn't it have to be tied to plans? And if it's not tied to plans, and we wouldn't be doing that because the site plan control isn't over, doesn't that mean then that it would survive? It seems to me.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I'm just confirming this with one of my colleagues. I've not encountered this yet, so just I'll look into it and then.
The acting secretary treasurer may be able to answer. Is that?
Yes, I see he's popped up. So Matt or Mr. Garnett, if you will.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So typically a variance would run with the land. Then the question, of course, would be whether approval is tied to plans. And then the second question may be, did we specify use? And I believe in this case, the application does specify a specific use. But other than those components, typically it does run with the land.
Thank you, Mr. Garnett.
Thank you.
All right, so I guess at this point we need to make a decision as to whether or not we want to adjourn this application and give it a chance to move forward or not. So I'm going to call a vote on that. Mr. White.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have just a question for staff in terms of the concern about the general purpose and intent of this provision in the zoning bylaw, in terms of its intent to limit the impact of the use, the dominance of the use on the site. I think it's, maybe staff can comment on this. I think it's significant that with this use and the diagrams and material that's been submitted with the application, with the showing the sort of visual presentation of the thing. It strikes me that the size of the building here is not necessarily the sum total of the extent of the impact of the use in terms of its impact in the overall picture of things. I noticed that the site contains, I think I counted 18 or 20 vacuum stations on the property. There's several separate structures, fencing and access controls, etc. I'm wondering if staff is concerned, if their concern is sort of placed on that kind of thing, on those factors, that the 300 some odd square meters of building really doesn't represent the total impact of this kind of use on the site. Perhaps staff could comment on that, because I'm not comfortable with the extent of the variance really addressing the general purpose and intent of the bylaw provision here.
Lazaro?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this was something that I was dealing with throughout the review process. So the variance, so the provision under the zoning bylaw under the IL zone that limits a car wash to 300 square meters it's the gross floor area of the car wash. So I really only could look at the floor area of the building itself. And the intent of that 300 square meters is so that the commercial use or the non-industrial use doesn't dominate the lot. So the fact that there was a site plan submitted that hadn't been approved yet, that was showing that indeed the entire lot was occupied by queuing lanes and then vacuum stalls, I couldn't reasonably consider that as part of my review, simply because I was looking at what the variance was that was being requested. It was to increase the gross floor area, which is only tied to the building. And so to increase the gross floor area from 300 square meters to 476 on a lot that is over 5,000 square meters, and then with two lots to the south, also zoned IL, still slated for development. That was the reasoning behind why I felt like the increase in the gross floor area for the building itself was minor. The rest of it is all covered under site plan approval. And so I would leave that to my colleague to address that under the site plan approval process.
Yes, Mr. White?
Thank you.
All right, so at this point, the question is, do we vote on an adjournment on this, given staff's comments and concerns about a number of things? So I'm going to put it out there then. And Mr. Bond, we went back and forth in terms of whether there should be a sine die or whether we should go to a date in the future. Ms. Clazaro, if in talking with your colleague, if we picked something like a September 7th date, would you be reasonably assured that the site plan control process would be far enough along for you to then complete your review and come back to us?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't want to speak on behalf of my colleague. I understand that site plan control can take sort of an indeterminate amount of time based on the application coming forward. So based on last week's or the previous hearing, and understanding that site plan for a medical facility, which is fairly straightforward for the most part, had been in the works for several months. I think September 7th is probably a little early. So I would say sine die is probably the most appropriate if you're wanting to adjourn.
All right, thank you. That's helpful. So members of the panel, then how about we vote on an adjournment?
Madam Chair, could I just ask one question of the applicant? Wondering what the implications are of doing an adjournment in terms of the business deal. Is there a possibility you can't get all the dots connected along with this building size, because there are other things that fall into the template. So can you tell us what trouble this will cause to, I mean, is it not something that you can go back and negotiate an extension to the deal?
Well, I'm not negotiating the extensions directly. There's some lawyers and some business parties to the deal, but like I'm given to understand that this is a rather critical juncture. Notwithstanding, we've already paid the site plan application fee and we're committed financially to that. And of course, to tonight's, attendance, if it's determined that this is not going to proceed in any way, shape or form under the a minor variance, then it kind of brings the deal to a halt and begs the question how much more time we're going to spend on the site plan. Like, I think we're reasonably confident between my discussions with the assigned site planner and urban design that we can make this site work within the confines of the footprint of 5,000 and some odd square meters. The real issue is whether we can make this footprint work on the site, and I'm not sure the deal will survive if we don't have certainty after this evening.
So just a question for you, Madam Chair, then, if we, I guess for Mr. Garnett, is that what I'm very uncomfortable with is just giving an increase in the size of a building without any real supporting. I mean, the site plan is so preliminary at this point. We don't have one to say that, there are mitigating circumstances that make the building increase large. I really am getting to the adjournment part, but my reluctance is to tie it to the land if this deal does fall through, and I don't know how we would circumvent that. And I don't feel like we have any evidence here, particularly in the absence of comments from staff, that they're comfortable that there's enough additional landscaping or any other thing that could mitigate the increase in size and the other the vacuum base and that sort of thing. So my tendency is to go with an adjournment. I just wanted to understand what it might do to, I hate causing duress, but I think it's premature.
All right, thank you, Ms. Willis. Mr. White.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A question to staff. This limitation to the 300 square meter GFA for car wash on this site, does that limitation apply to other zones where car washes are located, or is it unique to this particular zoning? I'm wondering if I'm looking to build a car wash in right in the center of a business park, for example, in a different zone, am I limited to the 300 square meters no matter where I build it in the city of Ottawa, or is this unique to this site?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't believe the 300 square foot limitation applies to any zone where a car wash is permitted. Again, a car wash is not a light industrial use. I think we referred to it as I think they were calling it a commercial use, just to give it a more general classification. So I don't believe there is a size restriction across the board that all car washes are limited to a gross floor area of 300 square meters, but I can certainly take a look at some of the other non-industrial zones and get some more information on whether there are similar limitations.
Thank you. Yes, Madam Chair. I think I'd like to have that information. It sounds as if we're heading toward a adjournment on this, but if and when it comes back, I would like to know, I'd like that information as to size of these things in different locations in the city.
All right, so noted, Mr. White. Okay, Mr. Bond, did you have, because I think we're going to go to a vote on an adjournment at this point.
I mean, I can get into the merits of the application, but it sounds like you're not even ready for that at this point. So I just would stress that this is a vacant site in a growing area. There's obviously time sensitivity and serious money on the table, and an adjournment will certainly cause duress. So it would be very disappointing from a business standpoint and not in the interest of obviously promoting development, but I can.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bond. We understand your situation. All right, members, all those, so on the question of an adjournment, sine die, all those in favor? All right, so for the record, 3 members, including myself, are in favor of an adjournment, sine die. Mr. Hindle is dissenting on that decision. All right. Okay. So, Mr. Vaughn, hopefully all is not lost, and that you can get through the site plan control process very quickly, and then get back to us, early fall, early to mid fall. So,
Okay.
but good luck with that. I hope it does work out for you.
Okay, thanks for your time.
Thank you. All right. Also want to call down application 2 and 3. Looking for Mr. Hatam.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. You're not
I'm-
Mr. Hatam.
No, my name is Bijan Safi, Bijan Safi. I am the representative of Mr. Hatam. Unfortunately, he was tied up and he can't attend, but he has nominated me as his representative from the beginning of the application, and I've been dealing with the staff and the city and the Committee of Adjustment. If you don't mind, we carry on without him.
So that'd be fine. Thank you for that good introduction. So we're concerned about the item number 3 with regards to the application for minor variance, not with the consent necessarily, but with the minor variance. So our understanding from comments from staff is that there's a number of zoning deficiencies that are still possible, and that in fact the application for minor variance before us may not be complete, and that there may be additional minor variances that would be required.
So I am very glad, Madam Chair, to hear that you have no problem with the consent of severance. As you may be aware, this is an old application that lapsed because of some technical issues, especially with the bank not issuing the letter of postponement on time. We have had over 9 conditions on the original application for the severance, and we fulfilled all of them. When it came to registration, due to the COVID-19 and not having enough people at the bank, the application lapsed on the 7th of October of 2021, just less than about 10 months ago. And this really, as you mentioned, I'm very glad that you have no problem with the severance. When it comes to, when we reapplied, and as you know, the lapse time now is 2 years, which we missed it by 3 months. We lapsed in October, and in January, the lapse time has increased to 2 years. So that didn't work to our favors. So when we reapplied, we saw a property that was similar to what we like to build there, especially having a double garage. That double garage requires a wider building footprints that will bring us to the minor variance. And instead of having a 1 meter setback, we asked for the 0.81. So when
Safi, I guess the question at this point is, we're proposing to adjourn that application today because we don't think we have the full application before.
I am going there. I'm going there.
Okay.
I'm explaining that it really does not need to be adjourned as long as the application is heard today. I have here, so when I put the application in, I was asked, what are you planning to do? I said, I'm building a detached dwelling. And this detached dwelling has a double garage. And because I saw a similar plan that we like to implement in this vacant lot that we are creating, which needs this minor variance, and that's the only minor variance that I'm dealing with.
So, Mr. Safi, can you explain to me then,
Yes.
just sorry to interrupt, but I guess I want to get cut to the chase.
I'm
Because
cutting to the
the
chase
reality
now.
is staff is saying that you need more minor variances,
Yes.
quite
Yes.
possibly.
Yes.
So what do you say to that?
Okay.
What do you,
I
so they're saying that
I
they
have
actually
explained-
haven't had a chance to review your application.
I have explained to Ms. Kelly that this application, really the proposed building plan that we submitted, it has really, I'm going to read of what I wrote here. To address these deficiencies, I must say that at the time of submitting application to save time and money, we ask for a variance application on the side yard setback because you get a saving for doing it at the same time, to be 0.81 meters instead of the required 1 meter. This is only to accommodate a larger garage. We were asked for a design for which we used a similar project design and built plans by a friend elsewhere. We were asked to do the site plan to show the two buildings, the relationship of them to each other. And we provided, then we were asked to show an example of the proposed building. It seems that we have shot ourselves in the foot. This is where we went wrong. So this proposal building is not an actual building that we are building. It's very similar. But because I was asked for more information, so, and I had these plans that were elsewhere built, I keep offering more information.
Mr. Safi, here's the good news. If we proceed with the consent, then it gives you lots of time to then determine what you really want to do and make sure that you have the right minor variances. So Ms. Kelly, can you come forward, please? Ms. Kelly, I see that you're the planner on this file. Just want to confirm with you, good evening.
Good evening.
To confirm that you maintain that there are some zoning deficiencies beyond the variances that have been identified?
Yes, that is correct, Madam Chair. I identified additional deficiencies. They related to the width of the driveway, the soft landscaping area in the front, and also the zoning bylaw requires the garage to be set back further. Through discussions with Mr. Safi, he emphasized that this is a preliminary design. I indicated that the Committee of Adjustment often adjourns applications in these instances, but an alternative could be to require, as a condition of the consent, revised plans.
That doesn't give me a lot of comfort, Ms. Kelly, because that means that we have really no idea how many more possible deficiencies that there might be from what you've identified. So on that, then I guess I'm looking for comments from the committee members. Mr. Hindle.
Sure. I think I'll jump on the same bandwagon that I was with the last application adjournment. I think it's my opinion that we can't require adjournment. We can heavily suggest it, but in this case, this evening, if the applicant so desires, and then we can choose to deal with the application as it's presented and may be deficient at that time and go from there. But otherwise, on the question of the adjournment, I'm happy to continue and hear it this evening.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hindle. Ms. Willis?
Just a question of staff. It's not clear to me in the absence of normally when we're going for variances to yards to accommodate design and all these other things, we have a concrete proposal and we tie it to plans. So if we take the side yard setbacks in isolation, we can't tie it to plans. I guess we could insofar as it pertains to the variance being sought, but is that a variance that's supported by staff to have no clear access to the rear yard on either side of the house?
Through you, Madam Chair. So if committee were to tie to the decision to the variance sought being the reduced side yard setback, my thinking was that they could revise the driveway width, set back the garage, and that wouldn't affect the building envelope. My only concern with the reduced side yard setback related to comments from building code staff. They indicated that they needed more information about whether there would be windows or openings to ensure conformity with the building code, and then that would be addressed at the building code stage.
But just a follow-up comment is that then the applicant's no further ahead if we were to grant the variances, which to me do inhibit access to the rear yard from the front yard, because normally they're a meter or 1.2 meters, at least on one side. Then the applicant's no further ahead, and it seems more appropriate to defer to adjourn until he can figure all this out.
All right, so Mr. White, I believe your hand was up next. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, further to that, we grant the minor variance with only with respect to side yard. The issues of the building code compliance will follow with the building permit application. If the side yards aren't sufficient to meet the building code requirements, then you don't get a building permit. I'm not uncomfortable with simply dealing with the principle of the side yard variance on its own. I think the issue of the building code compliance is something that has to be addressed at that time. As far as the other provisions, the other concerns that have been brought up by staff with respect to landscaping in the front and double driveway restrictions, I mean, those go without saying. They're going to be there after if we deal with the side yard setback issue on its own. They're going to be there anyway when the applicant goes to get his building permit. So I don't have, and I think I'm in agreement with Member Hindle that I don't have a problem dealing with the side yard minor variance on its own in association with the consent, and let the chips fall where they may when the applicant goes to get a building permit.
All right, thank you, Mr. White. All right, Mr. Safi, I'm hearing from the members right now, so I will not call on you to speak, because I think right now the decision's being left with the panel members. So I'm of the opinion that I never like to deal with applications in a piecemeal fashion. I don't think that represents good planning. I actually think you should deal with an application when you know all of the variances, and we have staff telling us that they've identified additional variances. So it seems to me that the better way to deal with this is, in fact, to make sure that we have a fulsome application in front of us with all of the deficiencies and all the zoning variances identified. So I would prefer to be adjourning on the minor variance. So I think we need a vote, though, one way or the other, just to make sure that we've addressed it. So the intent would be to adjourn the minor variance application sine die. So on the question of that adjournment sine die, all those in favor? Okay, so I'm also in favor of an adjournment sine die on the minor variance application. So Mr. Garnett, in this case, does the adjournment succeed, or because we've got a tie? I'm not actually quite sure which way it goes at this point.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we treat it as a motion to adjourn, and the proposition has failed on a tie vote.
It's failed. So we're going to hear it. Is what I'm okay. All right. Well, in that case, Mr. Safi, you got your wish. We're going to hear your minor variance. There you go. Okay, so I'll call you down a little bit later. We're going to start with other applications. Actually, you know what, Mr. Safi, I think you are first, because it's application 2 and 3 that we're going to hear now, because we've already dealt with number 1, which has been adjourned. So, I think that's good. All right. In that case, then we're not requesting a presentation from you, Mr. Safi. You can come back. Mr. Safi, come back.
I was kicked out, and I'm back now.
Oh, you were kicked out?
Yeah. And I said, well,
terribly sorry about that.
How am I going to get back in? And then it asked me to sign. Thank you so much.
So, Mr. Safi, just before you go, I have to read to you, because I will need for the statutory declaration on signposting. So do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted first at the property to which the application applies, that it was there for the prescribed number of days before the hearing, and that it was clearly visible and legible for the entirety of that time? Do you either affirm or swear?
Yes,
I beg
I
your
do.
pardon?
Yes,
No, you
I
have to
do.
say,
Yes,
please swear or affirm. Do you
I
swear or
affirm
affirm?
and I swear that the sign
Okay.
was up and visible all that
I
time.
need one or
Still
the other.
there.
That's all. I just need
You're
one
still
or the
there.
other. Thank
Yes,
you.
yes.
All right. With that, then I'm going to go straight to questions then from the panel members. Oh, just and hold that thought. There is a correction that we're making to your notice, Mr. Safi. So for the record, where we describe the severed land and the retains land, we are striking the words "and irregular depth." So my understanding is the lots are not irregular. And so we're going to strike that wording from the notice in both in relation to part 2 and in relation to part 1. You agree?
Yes, I agree. I just want to explain why this happened, because on the registered plan, it actually is a couple of centimeters shorter on one side and the other side. And when I was putting the application, I was assuming this property line rather than the other one. So, and it would not correlate with each other. And I was asked to put irregular. That's why the word irregular came to play there, because of that couple of centimeters on each property line on each end. Thanks. I have no
All right.
problem. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Safi. Questions for our agent? Mr. Hindle.
Yeah, thank you. So given that we are hearing the minor variance question this evening, can you describe, especially because we do not have, as you have established that the plans that are provided are preliminary and kind of not what you're intending to build. So can you describe to me then why the side yard setbacks reduced as you're requesting are reasonable in this case, especially given the question that Ms. Willis brought up previously about access to the rear yard and how 0.8 meters is probably tight to be able to allow you to access a rear yard for maintenance and access.
Is the
Mr.
question
Safi?
addressed to me?
Yes, it is.
Yes, yes. Okay. First of all, 0.81 and 1 meters at 19 centimeters does not really make that much of a difference with today's equipment. And also, having this lot backing to Ogilvy, we have complete access from the back, from the street side. Should we need any access, we get permission from the city and access the backyard, should it be a big thing that needs to happen. Otherwise, I don't think I need to get any equipment in the back there after the building is erected, and I don't think it will make any issues for maintenance in the future for me. Is that
questions, Mr. Hindle?
Okay, so the answer, I guess, then as to why you're requesting the 0.8 meters on either side is simply that you want a larger building. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Okay, but there's no relationship that you can provide to me as to why it's reasonable from a streetscape perspective or from an access perspective as to why it might be a reasonable choice or a reasonable proposition to do that.
Another reasonable choice for having a larger structure. This neighborhood originally was established with 100 and 120 foot frontage lots, and a lot of bungalows and a lot of semi-detached and a lot of bigger buildings have been put on this street to keep the fashion of the buildings. You don't want to put these narrow little tiny buildings beside these bigger structures and bigger buildings. So it actually help, I don't know what the word would be, help with the scenery or the fashion of the buildings, rather than having a very small building. This will shows itself as equally big to the other buildings that are on the street there.
Okay,
This
so
is
you're
another
speaking
way.
to the massing of the buildings themselves. However, do you have any evidence that you can provide that other buildings in the area have similar reduced side yards, such that the proposal would be keeping with that with your proposal?
As I mentioned, this bylaw zoning of 30-foot wide lots, 9-meter wide lots, only came to an effect some 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, not long ago, and allowing narrower building. Maybe it's longer than that. I'm sorry if I'm making a mistake. I have lived in this neighborhood myself for the last 27 years. I'm still living on the street, and I respect all my neighbors and all what is going on in my neighborhood. It is my neighborhood. I'm not a developer. I'm building a house. We are building a house for the owner to live in it, and having a family with children and 2 cars, we definitely need a bigger building to accommodate. And as I said, there are other developments that will be happening in the area. There are many older buildings that are on the street that are going to be demolished very soon. 120-foot lots, 117-foot lots. It's going to be coming to be split into a smaller houses. One example of that would be at the end of the street, that one lot of one house was turned to 4 units. The houses are extremely small and narrow, and it's like an eyesore to everybody that's passing by. All neighbors talk about that. So that's why we suggested to have a more mass of the building in that neighborhood. I don't know of any minor variance been accepted or been applied for yet, but it will be.
Okay. So I guess my concern here that you may be able to kind of figure out is that you're proposing a larger building to allow for a 2-car garage. However, the zoning that's in place does not allow for a 2-car garage. So I think that's the part where I'm a little bit confused, because as the planner has stated, as of right, you do not have the ability to construct a 2-car garage. So even if we were to grant you the side yard setback reductions, that still would not allow you to build a 2-car garage, which is the basis for asking for the larger or the smaller side yard setback. So I guess that's where I'm a little bit lost as to your rationale kind of falls apart, because we don't have a complete building plan that's intended to be built in front of us.
The zoning bylaw, as Ms. Kelly has explained to me, and we were arguing over it, is that the driveway cannot be more than 3 meters. However, once the garage is there, it becomes a better amenity for the car that can be parked and have some storage. We have a smaller car and a bigger car that we could just easily enter to the garage through this 3-meter allowance. You know, the garages are 2.5 meters, and we are hoping that we can use the 3-meter without increasing the size of the driveway to access the garage that way. I see a lot of nodding there.
Yeah, so maybe we can get some clarification. Ms. Kelly, I see that you've joined us. Go ahead, please. You can provide clarification. Great.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. No, that was not the interpretation of the zoning bylaw that was provided. I indicated to the agent that the maximum width of the driveway is 3 meters. Double wide driveways are not permitted, and we would not support a double garage. That information was not provided to me as the rationale for the reduction in the side yard setback at the time of my review of the application.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Kelly. Any other questions? Mr. White.
To Ms. Kelly, am I correct in understanding that this the width of this lot conforms to the zoning bylaw? It's a 9-meter bylaw width requirement, and we've got one that's 9.35.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair, the lots comply with the minimum lot width and area. So the minimum lot width is 9 meters under the zoning bylaw. The retained lot will be 21.13 meters and the severed lot will be 9.3.
So, Madam Chair, my understanding then is that this lot is designed to accommodate, exceeds the minimum requirement in terms of lot width and is thus designed to accommodate a residential dwelling unit in compliance with all provisions of the zoning bylaw. And one of those provisions puts a limitation on double driveways.
That's correct.
Correct in that, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe.
That is it, Mr. White.
Thank you.
Ms. Willis.
Question, I think, for Ms. Kelly. In the absence of a detailed proposal, the 0.81 meter side yards on both sides are being requested, and it seems like it's not a big objection at this point by staff to that one item. But I'm very concerned about projections into those side yards, like meters, gas meters, vents from the furnace, that sort of thing. And because they're both the same, 0.81 and 0.81, it doesn't necessarily allow for you to get a lawnmower from the front yard to the backyard, or somebody that's not really skinny to walk from the front yard to the backyard. So without a detailed proposal, I would suspect that staff would be more supportive of something that might even reduce one of those side yards to something less, thereby increasing the other one to a sufficient width so that you could get equipment from the front to the back. My point being that there's not enough information here. There's no evidence to support this. And I don't know whether it's standard for the city to grant variances where you cannot get, like I know in the case of townhouse units, on-street townhouses units, those variances, can't remember what they are, it may vary, but they used to be at least 1 or 1.2 or 1.5 meters in width. So does staff have a concern about 0.81 meter access from the front yard to the backyard?
Through you, Madam Chair, I don't have concerns from a planning perspective with regards to the variance. That being said, Building Code Services staff will be reviewing as part of a building permit the location of any hydro or air conditioning. So if they had concerns that that shouldn't be located on the side yard, they wouldn't permit that, and the building permit wouldn't be issued. So I think that would address your comment in terms of projections.
Thank you.
It's a good point, Ms. Willis, because something as simple as an air conditioning unit, or we don't know if there's a chimney that's as part of this, or so there's a number of things that could still get into that area. All right, any other questions from anybody? Okay, we can go to a speakers list. I don't have anybody from the public that has put their name on the list. But if there's anyone in the audience who would like to speak to either the consent application or the minor variance application, or both, now's your chance. All you need to do is raise your hand and the coordinators can bring you in. All right, I'm not seeing anybody come forward. So I think we can go to a vote on the applications. Members, are you comfortable with that? Move forward? Okay. Before we go there, though, Mr. Safi, there's a number of conditions that form part of if the consent application is granted, we have a number of conditions. And Ms. Kelly, we might want you back just for a minute, because the one that we didn't see here is the cash in lieu. Has that already been paid? Is that why it's not here?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair, that was paid as part of the previous consent application.
Okay, all right. So, Mr. Safi, we have a revised report with some revised conditions. Have you seen those? So we have a new number 1. We have a new number 7.
Just arrived. Yeah, it just arrived today. Ms. Kelly has kindly reworded the condition number 1 in consultation with the Building Code Office to separate the severance consent application from the minor variance regarding the detached dwelling in part 2. and the minor variance will be dealt with independently. So if the consent of the severance can go through.
What I'm asking you is if you've reviewed the conditions
Yes, I
of
have.
approval.
Yes.
And you're okay. So as
I
long
have
as
some
you know.
comment for it, but if I get a chance to do that.
Yep, now's your chance.
Okay. So all the conditions, the condition number 1 is accepted. I have no problem with it. We will prepare a side elevation of the existing to be submitted to the building code to be studied, and we will comply by the all the building condition Ontario Building Code.
That's right.
And
You have to satisfy. Okay.
Yes,
And number 2?
we will satisfy that. On the number 2, as I mentioned earlier, the proposed detached dwelling is only a design concept and will be revised to meet the zoning bylaw codes as well as the Ontario building codes at the time of building permit application, except for the minor variance requested to accommodate large garage for larger vehicle and storage area. And this is definitely has to do with all the deficiencies that were identified, that we will deal with all of that at the permit stage application stage, and we will comply by all the bylaw zoning, and we will comply by all the codes, the building codes in place. For the number
sorry, Mr. Safik, I just want to clarify this with Ms. Kelly, because you're suggesting that you do not want that condition to apply. So Ms. Kelly, did you consult with Building Code Services on this, or?
Through you, Madam Chair. So condition number 2 relates to the deficiencies that we previously discussed at the beginning of the hearing. So we need to see revised plans to illustrate the driveway width, the soft landscaping.
At the building permit time.
No, it's a condition of the consent.
No, there's no.
So I guess the question is, Ms. Kelly, if we do not apply this condition, Mr. Safi then goes to get a building permit. If he's deficient on these things, they're going to send him back to us with the requirement for new minor variances. Is that correct?
I included condition number 2, Madam Chair, to address the deficiencies. I think that if we were to not hear the minor variance this evening, or should committee not adjourn the minor variance or refuse the minor variance, we'll just be dealing with the consent, so we could remove condition number 2.
But if we deal with the minor variances, in which case then you want to see all right, that's going to be a little tough to do. So you know what we're going to do, Mr. Safi? We're going to leave it there for now. And then we can perhaps make a decision about that after we see which direction we're going in. How about number 3?
Condition number 3, I don't know if they can put the grading plan. I have already sent or maybe you have it already in front of you. The grading plan prepared by an Ontario licensed engineer is clearly showing that no, this is the site plan.
No, so I'm talking about number 3, which relates to independent services, right? Independent water, sanitary.
That is clearly shown on the grading plan that shows the services, the existing and the proposed services. It's already there, and the copy of the file is.
And Mr. Safi, it should be really easy to clear the condition then. If you already have it.
I don't know why it is redundant. We just
no, that's fine. Don't worry. If you have it done, that's great. You're just ahead of the game, which is good.
Actually, Ms. Kelly already had that conversation with me. That thing, it looks like pretty straightforward. You show it to me and it clears. And I already shown it in the past, and I'm not going to go get a new one done because it's already. This is
you don't need to.
Yeah.
You won't need to. You won't need to do that, but it has to be to the satisfaction of the development review manager.
Okay.
So it just needs to go one more step.
But it's already been done. Why are we doing it again? I don't understand. This is.
You have a letter then? Do you have a letter in your possession from the development review manager of the East Branch saying that he is satisfied with your independent water, sanitary, and sewer connections?
On the last application, yes. With providing
new application, Mr. Safi.
Or the new application, I don't know.
Oh, okay. Well, then you need to get one.
No, it stays.
All right, number 4. Number four.
Again, I say that the owner has already submitted the report, has entered to an agreement. The agreement with the city is already signed and it's on file, and I have sent a copy of it. I don't know why we are asking for it again. For the noise attenuation.
All right. So, Mr. Safi, typically, the noise attenuation speaks to building materials. So, Ms. Kelly, is it because it may be a whole new build that we need this, or what was your thinking here?
Through you, Madam Chair, I asked that committee staff pull the record for the previous consent application, and the condition related to the noise study was not cleared. They did submit a noise study and a draft noise agreement, but the actual condition wasn't clear. As this is a new consent application, staff have requested the conditions. The applicant can submit those studies again.
All right, thank you. All right, number 5.
But are you asking for a new study to be done, or are you accepting the study?
No, Mr. Safi, you can submit the same one.
Okay, as long as we don't have to do all these things over again.
Number 5?
Yeah, number 5, the drainage and grading plan has been prepared, signed, and sealed by the Ontario licensed engineer and submitted to the East Branch, and received satisfactory approval on the lapsed application under the about 1 year ago, and still valid and up to date. So this is again, if you're not making me to make a new one, I have no problem with this condition.
Was that not on the basis of the previous proposal, though?
I'm sorry, I'm lost here.
No, so that grading and drainage plan it dates back to the other application, right?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
It's under 1 year old. Okay. And it's the last time that I used it for the other application, it was approved and it was agreed, and it clearly showed that the grading was agreed.
I'm going to get Ms. Kelly to tell. I'm sure she did some homework. So, Ms. Kelly, on number 5.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. There was a grading and drainage plan that was submitted as part of the previous application. The condition was cleared, but our engineering staff have requested the condition again because it's a new consent application and they'll review it.
But you don't need
when you say it's a new, so Mr. Safi, let me just explore something, please.
Okay.
So, Ms. Kelly, when you say it's a new consent application, is it exactly the same lots that are being created?
Yes, it is.
It is. So why wouldn't that then apply if it's the same lots? We're not changing the lot sizes.
It's my understanding, Madam Chair, that this is the standard procedure to request the conditions because they're tied as to the decision for this consent application.
I see. All right. So I guess the good news again, Mr. Safi, is if it's done and it's exactly the same, it should be an easy do for
and
you.
if it could be worded that the old report can be reused.
Well, we don't need to say that. That's fine. You just submit the report that you have. Number 6.
Number 6, the registered 4R plans submitted and prepared grading plan are clearly showing that the concerned two old sheds and storage are removed and moved. And then the part 2, there's no other structures and there's nothing there's no appendices to the lot anymore. It was already verified on the last application, and I really don't need to reprove it because the grading plan shows all the structure and there's nothing there.
You have already demolished all of these structures?
The structures are demolished and the little shed has been moved, yes.
All right, so Ms. Kelly, if they're no longer in existence, do we need this?
Through you, Madam Chair, Building Code Services typically request a copy of the inspection report associated with the demolition permit. I don't believe we had that on file.
There was no demolishing. They were both portable sheds that they were removed from the site. And I took pictures and I sent them to Mr. Hodgins' attention, and he cleared the condition. And also after that, the surveying company came, surveyed the lot for grading plan, and removed. If you look at the old plans, they actually show the sheds there, and the new plan does not show anything in the backyard. So it's already been cleared as far as I understand, with pictures and the survey plan, the grading plan that was done by the surveyors.
All right, so I think what I'd like to do is,
If you look
committee
at the
members, I'm going to
plan-
need your input. So Mr. Safi, just let me finish here.
Sure.
So if it's already been done and Mr. Hodgins was in possession of that information, perhaps it would be, perhaps if we could, Ms. Kelly, if we could find that information. So what we can do is we can leave the condition as part of our approval, subject to confirmation that you get your hands on the material from Mr. Hodgins. If you're satisfied that that's done, then we're okay with taking that condition out. Members of the panel, are you okay with that as well? Would that work for you?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's leave it there for now, subject to that confirmation. And then Mr. Safi, if Ms. Kelly can't find that material, she may ask you to resubmit. But it looks like we might be able to.
I have all the emails and the pictures and the proof that this.
Oh, well then, why don't you just send that directly to Ms. Kelly tomorrow?
I
then?
have done it already. I have done it at the time of at the time of application at the Committee of Adjustment. I included all this information already. I've already sent it to them, and that's one of the
Kelly?
frustrations that I have.
All right.
Is that
So Mr. Safi, let's get confirmation from Ms.
Okay.
Kelly again. So Ms. Kelly, do you have that information?
Through you, Madam Chair, I have a copy of the grading plan that does show that there's no accessory structure there. This comment again was requested by Engineering and Building Code Services staff. I can go through the Committee of Adjustment material to see if there were photos included as well to confirm.
All right, so let's leave it the way we suggest. We'll leave it as a condition, subject to confirmation. And if in fact everything seems like that there's no need for the condition, then we're okay as a panel to have it removed. Okay, as part of the
I have
final.
pictures of the time that they were there and pictures of the time that they are not there, so I can send that to us.
Send those to Ms. Kelly tomorrow. All right, so number 7.
Number 7, again, this condition was added only this morning, as you notice, and the report is completed. At the time of the application, I was told that I need such a report. The report was completed and sent in. This was the report was done by Dendron Forestry Services, who did the tree report for us, which is not the condition anymore. And this already submitted, and I have already sent a copy of it if you like to be presented.
All right, so that's fine. It means it'll be easy for you to clear this condition. So that's great. So as far as I can tell, number 6 is the only possible one that we would be removing. Okay. All right. With that, then I think we can go to.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Yeah,
Ms.
I
Wallace.
just wanted to confirm something with Ms. Kelly. If these, in both cases, I think there were severances, consents combined with variances. So if I understand from what you just said, if we were to have adjourned the variance applications, number 2 would disappear from the list of conditions. Would number 7 disappear because that would happen at the time of building permit issuance?
Through you, Madam Chair, may I defer to Ms. Young, our infill forester who requested the tree condition, whether that could be addressed at building code.
Yes, of course, Ms. Young.
Through you, Madam Chair, this would not be addressed at all through the building permit process because it's not related to removal of a tree. This is just simply requiring new trees to be planted on each lot following development. So it's not tied to a permit, and it's a standard condition that I include for every severance application.
Okay, thank you. So the only one that would have been deleted, all the other conditions will also apply except for condition 2. Is that correct, Ms. Kelly?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any more questions? All right, so on the question of consent for this property, all those in favor of consent? All right, so for the record, the consent is unanimously granted. And on the minor variance application, all those in favor? All right, so for the record, the application is unanimously denied on the minor variance. So, and further, I guess we're going to need to ensure that the decision reflects our reasons for the denial. Who would like to go first? Mr. Handel.
Sure, yeah, I'll just outline that I think the applicant has failed to provide appropriate rationale as to why this application is not premature and to how the application meets the 4 tests.
All right, thank you, Mr. Handel. Ms. Willis.
I would agree with everything Mr. Hindle has said.
All right, thank you, Mr. White.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree that the reasons have been given by the other members. The only rationale we've heard is that the desire to create a large garage, which in itself is not permitted by the zoning bylaw, therefore it's not a relevant rationale for the granting of a minor variance.
All right, thank you, Mr. White. And for the record, in my case, I was compelled by staff saying that they identified in the report all of the additional deficiencies that they had identified, and I always believe an application should be dealt with aggregately, not piecemeal. So I would always prefer to wait to have a more full report. So or full application. So with that, then your application for minor variance, Mr. Safi, is denied. But you do have your consent.
Madam Chair, I guess we have to revise the conditions of approval to delete condition number 2.
Number 2, exactly. So we will eliminate that one. And now going back to the list, number 6. No, that one you can still we still need that one. Anything else? No, I don't think so. I think we're good. So just number 2 is gone.
Yeah.
So number 2 and possibly number 6.
Possibly number 6, yeah. Can I make a question?
Yes, you can.
This denial, it's not subject to denial in the future. Like when I put the building permit, and if I am dealing with minor variances, I put another application for the
yes, absolutely
for the severed lot, right? So it's just as part of this application.
Yeah.
This will be done.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you need to really look at what your design is and come to us with rationale as to why you think that represents good planning for us.
Yeah. No, at least if I have all the details there, I'm sure it will show better representation of the building.
Okay,
Thank
Mr.
you.
White? Go ahead, Mr. White.
Madam Chair, I'm not an expert on this. I'm wondering, is there any limitation under the Planning Act in terms of timing of the submission of an identical application? Perhaps staff could help us with that. Help me with that.
Good question. Mr.
Through
Gardner?
you, Madam Chair, I can clarify that there's no prohibition on timing for the next application. The applicant will have to demonstrate that the proposal is materially different from the one you've already heard and rendered a decision on.
Yeah, next time will be 30 centimeters instead of 18.
Okay. All right. Well, we look forward to seeing you in the future, Mr. Safi.
Thank you again. Thank you again.
All right, then. Have a good evening.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye. All right, we're going to number 4, which is for 712 Clear Brook Drive. And on that one, we're looking for Mr. Stone as the agent.
Yes, Madam Chair, I'm here.
Good evening, Mr. Stone.
Good evening.
So just need to read, I believe, I don't believe we have a statutory declaration from you. So give me a moment. Got to get my words. All right. Mr. Stone, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies, that it was there for the prescribed number of days prior to the hearing, and that it was clearly visible and legible for the entirety of that time? Do you either swear or affirm that to be true?
I swear that it was.
All right, perfect. And I'm looking at your application. I don't believe there's any, corrections to the notice or anything. So with that, then I'm going to just open it up to questions from members of the panel. Anybody? Mr. White?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question. I'm sort of struggling with the what is unique about this application and what makes the rationale for the reduction in the rear yard on what appears to be a standard sized lot in this zone. Can I ask if there is anything significant about the setbacks from the front property line that constrain the rear yard area? And does the balance of the, I don't know if we have a sketch of the property. Does the balance of the rear yard outside of this proposed sunroom exceed or meet the minimum requirement for the setback to the rear property line?
Mr. Stone?
You are asking myself or?
Yes, Mr. Stone. I think the question was to you.
No, we'd deemed it, and even as planning has looked at it, that it was balanced. And in regard to the property, it's still leaving plenty of green space. In this, we've been before the committee with a number of minor variances regarding similar sunrooms, and even on smaller projects. And it's a very balanced view with a large green space also being left.
Can I ask, Madam Chair, what is the setback from the existing building to the rear lot line, and how does that relate to the minimum requirement under the zoning bylaw?
All right, so maybe is it Ms. Kelly? Yes, Ms. Kelly, why don't we get to hear from you?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. To clarify, Member White, do you mean the rear yard setback, or you mentioned the front yard setback?
Well, if you can tell me how the front and rear yard setbacks relate to the bylaw requirement, that would be appreciated.
Yes. So to start, the required front yard setback for this zone is 3 meters. The existing building, based on the survey, has a front yard setback of 4.01 meters. In terms of the required rear yard setback, what's required under the zoning bylaw is 6 meters. The applicant is requesting a reduction in 4.92 for the sun yard. If you give me a moment, I can confirm what the setback is for the existing building.
Mr. Stone, do you have that number?
I
Andy?
do not, sorry.
Apologies, through you, Madam Chair. So the setback from the rear lot line to the existing building is approximately 9.7 meters. And again, what's required under the zoning bylaw is 6 meters.
Thank you.
Questions? All right, so I don't have anybody on the speakers list, so I'm going to make a call out to the audience. Is there anyone who would like to speak to this application on 712 Clearbrook Drive, and it's for minor variance for sunroom? Anyone want to come forward? Now's your chance. All right, I'm not seeing anybody come forward, so I think members, we can go straight to a vote on this. All those in favor of the application? All right, so for the record, the application is unanimously granted. Mr. Stone, thank you very much. Good luck with the project.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we're going to go to the next application, which is just a moment. I think we're going to go to North Side. So 42 North Side, looking for Mr. Robinson. Good evening. So, Mr. Robinson, I'm going to no statutory. We don't have the declaration from you, so
I don't think anyone hands them in these days.
we get the occasional one, which actually just adds confusion sometimes, but we appreciate it. We do appreciate it. When we go back in person, it'll be good habit to have. So do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies? It was there for the prescribed number of days prior to the hearing, and that it was clearly visible and legible for the entirety of that time. Do you either swear or affirm that to be true?
I swear that to be true.
Perfect. Couple of notice changes that we need to make. So my understanding is that we need to recognize that it is part of a current site plan application. So the application indicates that the property is the subject of a current site plan application, bracket D 07-12-22-0015 bracket under the Planning Act. So do you agree with this?
Yes.
All right, thank you. The other change that we're making has to do with the variance G, which is relates to the communal amenity area. We are striking 29 square meters and replacing it with 29.37 square meters. Do you agree?
Yes, that's fine.
All right, perfect. We do not require a presentation from you, so we can go straight to questions from our panel. Mr. Hindle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Robinson, can you just briefly describe effectively what has changed since the 2014 approval and what is being requested this evening? It seems like it's fundamentally fairly similar, but there's a couple kind of small differences.
Okay. I was not involved. The ownership has changed. I believe the entire consultant team has changed. The previous application, it was for a rental apartment building as well. I believe it had a 1 meter structural and landscaping setback to the north property line, which is adjacent to the church. And I believe it had a 1 or 2 meter setback to north side. And I believe it also had a parking variance, but it had less units. So the amount of parking proposed and required was slightly different. And it was, I think, a 3 or 4 story building. So it is, and it's the ownership of the property has changed and the design has changed as well. And that application was approved.
Right. Yeah. No. And that's it. I saw that it was approved, but I was curious just kind of what the tweaks have been since then. Now, I just had another question about the rear yard setback. Now, I understand it's a corner lot, so in this case, it's a technical kind of approach potentially. But so in this case, we're kind of treating it more like a side yard setback is the intention or the application in this case?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
And the other difference between the old application was 5 stories. It was a condominium development. This is a rental development. The residential market has changed in those intervening years.
Okay. And the intention, it looks like from the elevations, is that it's primarily facing kind of towards Richmond Road and north side?
That is correct.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, any other questions? All right, Mr. Robinson, can you tell me just a little bit about the consultation that you've gone through for this, just so we understand who you spoke with?
Certainly. The applications for the site plan were filed, I believe, in January. We are near at the, we've just submitted the 3rd round, and planning staff are comfortable with this going forward today. We did have a community consultation meeting. I think it was about a week before Christmas. It was quite well attended, primarily by residents to the south. It was hosted and coordinated by the councillor's office. And the notification sign for the site plan application has been up since January, and obviously the notification sign for the Committee of Adjustment hearing has been up a few weeks. We did receive comments, and you probably have seen them, from the property owner to the east, which is the Emmanuel Church. And that sort of caught us by surprise. So one of the members of the ownership group and I contacted the church on Monday. We had a video meeting with them late Monday afternoon, went over their comments. They had not somehow missed out on getting notification of the community meeting that was held for the site plan application, and the site plan that was presented that night is virtually the same as what we're showing tonight. So they did not get notification of that, but they got copies of the presentation materials that we presented that night, and they're included in their comments to you. We went over their comments. They'd also said that they had sent questions to the city. They really weren't sure who it was they sent it to, and they never did get a response. So there's been some communication breakdowns at that end. We were not aware that they had concerns. So we spoke to them on Monday afternoon, went over their concerns, and they've just earlier today, they sent me and the representative from the ownership group an email saying they're looking forward to working with us in the future. So we clarified their comments, and they were asking about, I guess, vibration and things, and we've clarified their concerns.
All right, thank you, Mr. Robinson. Okay, if there's no other questions from the committee, I'm going to go to, let's see, do we have, we don't have any members of the public who wish to speak according to my list, but if there's anyone in the audience who wants to speak to the committee about this application at 42 North Side Road, it is an application for some minor variances that relate to a proposed development under site plan control. Now's your chance if you'd like to come forward to speak on the minor variance application. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody come forward, so I think the panel can go to a vote. So on the question of the minor variance, all those in favor? All right, so Mr. Robinson, the application is unanimously granted. And I think that's it. So good luck with the site plan.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening, everyone. Bye-bye.
You too. Goodbye now.
Bye.
Okay, so we have essentially applications 5 and 6 and 9 and 10 left. So let's just go to 5 and 6, which relates to 20 Cordova Street. And I'm looking for Kayla Blakely, please.
Good evening, Madam Chair and committee members. I'm not Kayla Blakely, obviously, but I'm here as a colleague of hers on the applicant's behalf to address the committee this evening. My name is Steve Pence. I'm a planning consultant with Novatech.
All right, thank you. You are on my list, Mr. Pence, actually. It's just on the application, the agent's still showing as likely. So, all right.
I'd asked that they advise you that I would be attending because she couldn't be available tonight, so.
All right, okay, thank you. I need to read to you, Mr. Pence. So, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted first at the property to which the application applies, secondly, that it was there for the prescribed number of days prior to the hearing, thirdly, that it was visible and legible at all times? Do I either swear or affirm that to be true?
Yes, I affirm to the best of my knowledge.
All right, thank you very much on that. And looking at your notice, I don't believe there's any housekeeping items that we need to go with on this. Now, I think we want a full presentation, Mr. Pence.
Okay.
Are you prepared?
Yes, we had a presentation that was submitted to the committee, so I believe it's coming up on the screen here. There you go. Yeah, this is for 20 Cordova. If we could just go to the next slide, please. This application or applications relate to 20 Cordova shown here on this image. It's a corner lot at the northeast corner of Cordova and Lotta Ave. I would say it's just south of Baseline and west of Maryville Road. That property shown there in blue is currently occupied by a single dwelling. The property is about 878 square meters in area and has frontage on both Cordova with about 27.48 meters there, and then on Lotta Ave, it has approximately 32 meters. Next slide, please. I'll move quickly through these images showing the streetscape quickly, but I wanted to just sort of orient everybody to the property. The top image there shows Cordova Street looking north, and you'll see the property there on the right-hand side. That's the red building. The lower slide shows Cordova Street view facing south, and you'll see on the left-hand side of the image that little curving sidewalk coming from the subject property out to the sidewalk. Next slide, please. This top image is showing Lotta Ave view facing west. So on the right-hand side, there is a hedgerow there, which sort of fronts along the frontage of the subject property. And on the bottom image, looking in the opposite direction, you'll see the image of the house on the left-hand side, sort of peeking in behind the trees there. Just to give you a sense of the tree scope, the streetscape rather, there's no sidewalks along Lotta Ave. Next slide, please. Standing at Lotta Ave, this shows an image of the frontage along Cordova. This shows the image of the existing structure that's in place. Next image. And looking at the same structure from Lotta Ave, it shows the red structure there with the garage sort of in a bit of a dilapidated state, as the existing structure has been unoccupied for several weeks now. I guess this image here also shows some vegetation on site. There's a large tree to the rear of the property. There's a large one near the front facing onto Cordova, and there's the hedgerow as well that I pointed out earlier. Next slide, please. I'll just skip very quickly through this image here, but what this is showing is the overall intent to divide this property into two parcels to accommodate two single detached dwellings. I'll spend a little bit more time talking about this in just a moment, but this is really for illustrative purposes to show that two single dwellings can easily be accommodated on this divided property, subject to it being divided. It's the requested relief as part of the variances that I'll speak to in just a moment only looks to lot area and lot width. It does not look for any variances with respect to building setbacks and lot coverage, as those are matters that we'll deal with at the building permit stage when the final details of the dwellings are determined. So next slide, please. And very quickly here, these are some renderings or elevations showing possible homes that could be built on the properties. Next slide, please. So getting to the first application, this is the sketch here that illustrates the proposed severance. So the land's to be severed on the corner of Cordova and Lotta Ave for approximately 463 square meters. With 16.82 meters of lot width. That's just a little bit larger than the lands to be retained, for which we are requesting a consent certificate. The lands to be retained is slightly smaller at 415 square meters and 15.11 meters of width. And you'll note here that the application has been designed such that the corner lot is a little bit wider to account for its exterior side yard requirement as well. Next slide, please. So as part of this application, I guess the application is to divide the property to create two lots, both of which are marginally undersized in terms of lot area and lot width. So the first application for the corner lot is to seek a reduction from lot width of 19.5 meters to 16.82 meters. And correspondingly, a reduction of the required lot area from 600 meters to 490 square meters. Next slide, please. The second variance relates to what I call the retained parcel. Similarly, we're looking for requesting a reduction of the lot frontage from 19.5 meters to 15.11 meters, and the lot area from, again, 600 meters to 439 square meters. So again, these applications are about trying to get approval to create two lots that are marginally undersized, with the intent that the eventual buildings that would be developed on the property would fully comply with the required zoning performance standards that are in place on the property. Next slide, please. Recognizing that this is the division of an existing lot to create the opportunity for two dwellings, we took some time to look at other examples in the greater neighborhood for similar situations where lands had been divided to accommodate infill opportunities. And you'll see by the black markers that there are a number of sites throughout the neighborhood that have lots that have smaller width and smaller areas to accommodate just that. So I would suggest that the applications to create marginally undersized lots in terms of frontage or width rather and area is not out of character with the neighborhood and really reflects a transitioning of a neighborhood to fulfill intensification and more dense communities as promoted by both provincial policy statement and official plan policies in both the existing official plan and the new official plan. I recognize, of course, that the new official plan has not been approved by the ministry yet. However, it does contain very strong language about promoting infill opportunities to bring urban communities to more dense form. So that's stronger than what the current plan says, but both are consistent with PPS interests in making sure that communities develop with intensification to provide that choice of housing for different families and people at different stages in life. So next slide, please. I think that's sort of a quick summary of my application. I would say that with our application, we filed a very detailed planning rationale letter that dealt with both the Section 5124 criteria in the Planning Act to deal with the severance applications. And we as well in that planning rationale letter, we dealt with the 4 tests under the minor variance requirements and provided, I would say, a very detailed explanation. So I'm happy to answer any questions with respect to the contents of that rationale. And I'll remain on here for those questions. Thank you.
I actually have another question for you just before I open it up to the other panel members. Your notice states that you're also looking for partial discharge of mortgage charge and mortgage, mortgage charge. Is that correct? Can you explain that?
I can't speak too much to that. I didn't file the actual applications, as I mentioned earlier. I stepped in for this application for a colleague who wasn't able to attend tonight. Normally what we do as an organization when we represent applicants, we always consult with their legal counsel to ensure that our applications are meeting their legal requirements. And so the advice to indicate those as part of the request would have been advice we'd taken from legal counsel.
Okay, just bear with me for a moment because the staff report talks about that being a requirement, but I don't actually see it in your notice. Just get some clarification that I'm looking for. Ms. Scleroso, maybe you can come forward because your report talks about requires consent for conveyance and partial discharge of mortgage charge. Ms. Scleroso.
Hi there. Hi, Madam Chair. My apologies there for the delay.
That's okay. I'm just noticing that I don't see it in the notice though. So can you tell me where you got that?
Under the consent, you mean?
It would have to be under the consent, so, but I'm not seeing it readily. Maybe I'm blind and I'm missing it, but.
This is a very good question. Just give me one moment here.
Notice.
No,
Oh, yeah. Actually, it is there. It is there, right on the front page. It says the owner requires the consent of the committee for conveyance of partial discharge mortgage charge. Okay, it is there. So Mr. Pence, and you don't know anything about that. Okay. Is that something like at this point, like, are we striking that from the notice? I think that's that's the question I have. If, because we don't know what it is that we're providing approval for. Mr. White?
Madam Chair.
You have the answer, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'm going from past experience as a former secretary treasurer of committee of adjustment and having dealt with a number of these applications. It's not unusual for that request to be accompanying the consent to convey property. Quite often there are financial implications and mortgages on property that need to be discharged, et cetera. I was actually surprised with this committee that we don't see that more often, because it was generally a matter of routine in most of the cases that I dealt with where consents were applied for. It was just simply a provision put in there in order to deal with necessary financial things to discharge mortgages, et cetera.
Quite right. I mean, this is for us, it's the exception, right? So that's why it's such a red flag here. I'm going to ask Mr. Garnett if you know anything about this, why this would be here.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So the advice or understanding of committee staff is that this may be technically redundant, that if you have consent to the conveyance, you have the ability to mortgage each part separately and to discharge part of the mortgage that already exists. So we do sometimes see it. It's, in our understanding, is it's almost a belt and suspenders approach, because we have heard, we don't offer legal advice, but we have heard from professionals that it may not be necessary if you're seeking conveyance.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Mr. White?
Madam Chair, I agree with Matt, belts and suspenders issue, but a lot of the lawyers that I used to deal with were old fellas who did wear belts and suspenders quite often. It was a matter of routine that probably wasn't necessary.
All right. The only reason I ask is because this often, we see other commercial applications where we specifically are giving like the mortgage discharges on these things because it's part of a bigger deal. So that's why I was wondering whether or not there is a deal going on here somewhere that lenders actually need to see, the consent from the committee to get this. But all right, we'll leave it as is, I guess. I just wanted to make sure we weren't missing anything here, that there wasn't more to this request. Okay. All right. With that, questions from the panel? Mr. White?
Madam Chair, question of staff with respect to if this is granted, what future development might look like. I recall in some other corner lot severances that was my understanding was a bylaw requirement that would have the units front on different streets. In other words, in this case, one dwelling unit would front onto Cordova and the other would front onto Lotta, as opposed to the double fronting sketch that we have. Is there a bylaw provision that requires that fronting on separate lots or separate streets for corner lots?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So it's not actually applicable to this zone. It's the R1 A through GG zones where it applies, excluding F and FF, where you can sever a corner lot, reduce the required lot area, provided that the corner and the retained parcels have buildings fronting on and facing different streets. This zone is R1FF, so that provision doesn't apply.
Madam Chair, follow up to that question. Would there be any concern on the part of staff if this application were to be granted, requiring that the units be fronted on the different streets?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, there's no concern there that they're fronting on the same street. Again, that requirement is only it's sort of a favor, I guess, granted if you sever and take advantage of reducing the lot area by up to 49%. In this case, they're not doing that, so there's no issue with them fronting on and facing the same street.
But my question would be, would staff have any problem if we were to condition the requirement to front the units on the separate streets?
Thanks for the clarification, Madam Chair. So I guess I would want to know what the reasoning was behind that. Given that it's not required and there's corner lots in the other zones. As I said, this only applies to a handful of zones in the R1, subzones in the R1 zone. So given that it's not a requirement anywhere or in the majority of the zones, I guess I would wonder what the rationale was for that.
I'm looking at it in terms of this rationale similar to the reasoning behind the requirement in those other zones, and that fact that we are, notwithstanding that there may not be a bylaw requirement, we are being asked to significantly reduce, in my view, significantly reduce lot area and lot width. And I would see some benefit if we were to grant the application, some benefit from the streetscape perspective if we were to require the fronting of the units on the separate streets.
So the problem is we don't have anything before us, Mr. White, to really, so.
No, but Madam Chair, all I'm asking is I can see there is a rationale for doing it on certain lots in the city, which are reduced, maybe not to the extent that, or more to the extent excessively than what we were proposing here. But I think there are similar issues that might be rectified somewhat by doing the frontage on the separate streets. I'm wondering if staff would have any problem with that limitation.
I think we've heard from Ms. Esclaroso that she'd like to know why, like some reasoning behind it, because there's no requirement. So if we're going to impose that as a condition of development, then we kind of need to know why we're doing that.
Well, Madam Chair, my point is that there is a benefit in terms of the streetscape appearance on each of the streets.
Maybe we can get Ms. Esclaroso to speak to that. So I haven't looked to see what the streetscape looks like on Cordova versus Lotta. So Ms. Esclaroso, have you had a chance to look at that? Like, do you know, are there other lots with driveways on Cordova? Would it actually fit in? Like, how would that?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So in this area, again, because that requirement's not there, it's also a new requirement. So from what I've seen in this area and other similar neighborhoods of the same age, existing dwellings generally front on the same street as their neighbor. Like it's a little bit I wouldn't say it's unusual, but I think in this area, unfortunately, I can't bring up Geo Ottawa without totally crashing Zoom at the same time.
Of course.
I'm just looking at an aerial from Google, and I can see that a number of them, it's sort of a mixed bag, but it looks to me like The majority front on the same street as their neighbor, like the corner lot is not fronting on the other street. In some cases, yes, but in others, no. But certainly there's not a dominant pattern either way. In fact, I would almost say that the dominant pattern is, well, yeah, I would say that just the slightly edging out, that fronting on the same street as the abutting lot is edging out fronting on the opposite street.
All right, thank you, Ms. Clarosa. We appreciate that insight. Ms. Wright, do you have a follow-on?
Yeah, Chair, I'm familiar with this area, very familiar with this area. And in fact, the existing dwelling on this property fronts on Cordova. I would see no problem in terms of fronting any severed lot on, not that I'm necessarily supporting the application, but I would not see any issue with fronting the unit, one unit on Cordova and one unit on Lotta. I think there's a benefit that might be had in terms of the streetscape appearance, in terms of reducing the number of, reducing the driveways, etc., and the street on the one street lot in particular. On Cordova and up in the north and south, there are a number of corner lot situations where that exists. And yes, correct, there are some where it doesn't, but it does exist. And I think if the lots were to be severed here, we could have some benefit on the streetscape appearance.
All right, so thank you, Mr. White. What you're raising then is, I'd like to be able to have a discussion around this. So what you're raising is a request to add a condition to the consent that would see the requirement that there be fronting on the two different streets as part of the development. Now, I would have to think about how to clear that, but I'd like some thoughts from Mr. Hindle and Ms. Willis on that. Ms. Willis?
Yeah, I think we recently dealt with one in Rothwell Heights where we were dealing with that situation. And the reason for it was sort of a trade. You could go down to, it was either 49% or 51% of the lot area that was permitted. In return, you had to have it front on the other street. And there's a very definite streetscape advantage there in that you're looking at from the one street, you can't tell that there's a lot that's narrower. In this case, it's much more minor in terms of the reduction in area. And I don't see it as being a big benefit one way or the other. I mean, I really couldn't care whether it goes one way or the other. I think either would work. So I'm not prepared to impose that condition.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hindle.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I would be in accordance with Ms. Willis there, that I don't see a request for that to be applied, and the rationale isn't necessary in this case from what I can see so far.
All right, so Mr. White, I have to admit I'm in agreement with the other members. So I could make a call and a vote for adding the condition, but I think it's not going to pass. So. All right. Anything else, Mr. White, on questions? Anyone else? All right. In which case, we do have a number of speakers tonight. So I'd like to start with the Community Association. We have two representatives, Ms. Wilson and Ms. Pratt. Please come forward.
Hi, this is Nancy Wilson.
Wilson. You have a presentation, I hear.
I do have a presentation. Okay. This is 20 Cordova Street. And you can see the big trees on there. But anyway, I'll get to that. Let's start. Good evening, committee chair and committee members. The City View Community Association would like to provide comments for the hearing this evening for the proposed new builds at 20 Cordova Street. We would just like to mention before we start that it's a shame that this former perfectly good family home that was on a beautiful mature tree lot has been allowed to sit and fall into disarray and is now to be demolished for the profit of the developers. This would have been affordable housing, not anymore. New OP. The City View Community Association would again like to remind the Committee of Adjustment, the planners, and the applicants that any provision of the new OP will not be considered until such time as the required new official plan is approved by the province and secondary plans and new zoning bylaws are enacted. The Committee of Adjustment role has not changed, and it continues to review applications for variances to the existing bylaws. The Planner's Report. The City Planner's Report maintains staff confirmed that the applicant that the elevation drawings and site plans indicating one detached dwelling on each of the newly created lots submitted as part of the minor variance applications are for demonstrative purposes only and may not reflect the plans of the to be submitted as part of the building permit application. The proposed dwellings were not reviewed for compliance with the zoning bylaw in preparation of this report. The proposed dwellings will be required to comply with the development requirements of the zone, or further minor variances will be required and assessed whether the 4 tests are satisfied. I just need to say that I'm really confused because we had 2 other cases tonight where we were talking about this kind of stuff and things being missing, and how you can make a decision without all of the pieces there. So, and I think you said that piecemeal is not good planning. And that's happened in almost every application tonight. There's been difficulty because all of the information and plans are not present. So we'll go back to, we think we should you should refuse this application. On this basis, the City View Community Association maintains that this application is premature and should be denied. We reviewed the application and plans and were prepared to make comments, but after reviewing the City Planner's report, we have learned that this is only speculative. How can the Committee of Adjustments approve these minor variance applications without the proper documents, plans, and possible further variances? How can the city planner claim that they have no concerns? How can the City View Community Association determine if this is compatible with the existing land use patterns so that the detached dwelling residential character of the neighborhood is maintained or enhanced? It is clear that there is not enough evidence to determine whether all of the 4 tests have been met. Now I'd like to go to our slides. So this is the first slide, which shows the trees that are on the property, that were on the property. And then you can go to the next slide. This property has been vacant and derelict for some years. It continues to have a large distinct tree, 88.5 centimeters facing Cordova, as well as a Norway spruce, 39.8 centimeters on the southwest corner of the lot. After the May 21st storm that devastated many distinct trees in City View, these trees appeared to be unscathed. The honey locust tree was attacked by a backhoe on June the 6th and left to sit, and then it was completely removed last week on July the 13th, along with other trees on the property. There was no permit for these removals, and bylaw was attended on June the 6th and took pictures and stopped them from taking the tree down totally at that time. The forester should be able to confirm this, as the city has evidence that this tree was removed illegally and fines may be pending. Like I said, the trees have been taken down on that lot since then on July the 13th. This tree can be identified as tree 3 in the new tree information report dated June the 10th. This report was after it was damaged by the backhoe. So the report came after the June 6th when it was damaged by the backhoe. The report came out on June 10th, showing that it was in poor health. It should be noted that the attached photos of the tree in the tree information report are said to be taken March 2021 with snow on the ground, and May 2022. The honey locust is a species that is slow in reaching full leaf in the spring and would not be in full leaf in May, showing its full health and impressive canopy. I guess you can go to the next slide. This is the house now with the trees missing. On July 13th, 2022, the Norway spruce was also taken down. You can see the stump on the right-hand corner of the picture. Yet in condition 2, in the planner's report, it calls for the retention of tree number 2, that same Norway spruce. Under additional comments in paragraph 1 in the planner's report, it states that the city's infill forester requested that the tree information report be updated to include setbacks such that tree number 3 is protected. That's the honey locust that was taken down. The developer also ignored this and chose to take down tree number 3 after it was attacked by the backhoe. The planner noted section 4.8.2 of the new official plan provides strong direction to maintain the urban forest canopy and its ecosystem services during intensification, noting when considering the impacts on individual trees, planning and development decisions, including committee of adjustment decisions, shall give priority to the retention and protection of large, healthy trees over the replacement, plantings, and compensation. Further, that the city and the committee of adjustment may refuse a development application whether it deems the loss of a tree or trees avoidable. This application should be refused. There also is confusion about how many tree reports there are. The planner referred to a number of times to an earlier report, but this committee only had the June 10th report when we asked for it earlier. City View Community Association was not contacted by this developer, although we understand he has previously received approval for infills from the Committee of Adjustment and has constructed here in the past and has lived here in the past, actually across the street, and should know the Community Association contacts. It is interesting to note that the city foresters were involved with 3 information reports back in March and April of this year, and this application was deemed complete in June 17th, 2022, yet the City View Community Association was never contacted. There were other discrepancies that we found in the report that have us sort of scratching our head. The plans show 2 new builds facing Lotta, yet frontages and conditions suggest that one build will front onto Cordova. You can see that in that example in condition 8 and number 10, where they're talking about filling in the walkways or putting concrete down where the drives go across on Cordova. And at this point, I'm just going to say, Member White was talking about the streetscape. We have to live here and we have to look at these houses. And there are a number of houses on Cordova that face onto Cordova, the same as there's a number of houses on Bassano that face onto Bassano. That's how our neighborhood is built. And to take the 2 houses and put them onto Lotta, you see now, you'll see a big wall across Cordova instead of the friendly front of a house. So what Mr. White was suggesting is a really good plan for us as a community, what we would like to see if this has to go through. Streetscape, yes, houses on Cordova may, but the other committee members said it doesn't matter to them, but it does matter to us, what we see. In the past, driveway width, setbacks, percentage of soft landscaping, percentage of lot coverage, corner lot design, and compliance with the character of the neighborhood were all considered by the planners and committee of adjustments. Yet in this application, they are all irrelevant, as the submitted plans are for demonstrative purposes only and may not reflect the plans to be submitted as part of the building permit application. The proposed dwellings were not reviewed for compliance with the zoning bylaw in the preparation of this report. This is so against what we're used to. Another point of confusion for us is the mention of section 51 bracket 24 of the Planning Act. And maybe somebody can explain this to me. It's the plan of subdivision approvals. When did this division of one lot into 2 become a plan of subdivision that needed approval? Clearly this application is premature and should be denied. But I would like an answer to that question about 51 bracket 24, because maybe I'm missing something. And that's it. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Will Ms. Pratt be joining you this evening? Does she have a follow-on?
Jill,
I'm here, but I won't be speaking tonight. Our comments with Nancy were together.
All right, thank you, Ben. All right, so I'm just going to see if I can't get some of your questions answered. So back to Ms. Scalzero. Sorry, I'm having trouble with your name this evening, it would seem. All right, so I'm just looking for the sections in your report where you're talking about the planning. You're quoting the planning sections, the Planning Act sections. Not seeing it readily. So you heard the question though, Ms. Scalzero. from Ms. Wilson regarding reference to sections. No, yeah, see, this is I see. With respect to the criteria for subdivision of the land listed in section 5124 of the Planning Act. Can you remind me what that? I don't have the Planning Act in front of me, and I don't know it well enough to know if that specifically deals with consents. Can you confirm that for me?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So yes, well, that's the section of the Planning Act that deals with subdivisions, but it also applies to severance. It doesn't, those, the provisions under that section are listed as for being for plans of subdivision, but they also apply to just severance, consent to sever.
All right, so what does provision 24 say? You have it in front of you?
No, I'll pull it up. Just give me one moment here. It's pretty slow over here this evening. Just a moment.
It would seem technology is slow everywhere tonight. Must be the summer heat.
Chair Trump, could I just ask while we're waiting that the rest of the pictures get shown, because there's some that show the trees that were cut down and the size of the stumps. So if those could get shown to you, you'd see that. If we flip through these, okay, that's the other one taken down. The great big honey locust is gone now. And the next slide, that's the Norway spruce taken down, and I think it's because it's on that corner. So condition 2 said that it should stay. And the next one, those are the 2 stumps of them, and that's a size 9 shoe. So it just gives you an idea of the size of those trees that were taken down.
So thank you for that, because the one thing, of course, that we weren't aware of is that I read the conditions, like condition number 2, very clearly requiring for retention of these trees. So, Ms. Young, are you there? Can I have the gallery view, please?
Yes,
Ms. Young. So obviously we're going to have issues with clearing condition number 2. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I was just advised today, actually this afternoon, that the trees had already been removed, and that forestry is proceeding with a bylaw infraction investigation right now. They just found out recently as well. So they are aware that it was coming to committee tonight, but again, I had no notice of this until today. So I had obviously prepared my comments prior to today. But I do think it's reasonable to revise the conditions. Obviously, we can't clear any of the ones that I suggested before. So I do have suggested wording, and I don't know if it's best to just email them to the committee or read through them tonight, or.
So I think for the record, maybe I will get you to actually read it into the record. And but so just to be clear, we would be deleting condition number 2 and replacing it with the wording that you'll give me in a moment. And then is that the only one that was related to trees? Yeah, it looks like it. Okay.
Yeah, I think, it was just one condition that included kind of 2 different items before. So we would be deleting that and replacing it with, I'm suggesting 2 new conditions.
2 new conditions. Okay. All right. Hold that thought. We're gonna find out what section 5120 provision number 24 is, and we'll come back to, because I'd also like to get Mr. Pence to tell us a little bit about that at some point. So we'll get back to Ms. Young. Ms. Claroso, the Planning Act provision 24.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So it's subsection 24 under section 51. And it's conditions for, it's a criteria for considering a draft plan of subdivision. What I'm looking for is the section within the Planning Act that refers back to section 51, subsection 24, stating that these criteria can also apply to smaller scale severances, not just plans of subdivision. I've seen it before, and I'm on the spot right now, and I'm trying to find it, and it's
okay. All right, that's fine.
I'll keep looking. Yeah, but I'm familiar with this one, and that's why this was included in that report.
Mr. Garnett.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just building on that, section 5312, which is 53 being the consent section of the Planning Act states that the committee, it says the council or minister shall have regard for the matters set out in section 5124, which is the subdivision criteria.
So in other words, delegated authority to us, and therefore we can, okay, I think I get it. All right. All right, so it doesn't mean that we're dealing with a plan of subdivision. That's good. All right, what else did I want to explore on this? You raised a lot of really good points, Ms. Wilson. So Mr. Pence, were you aware of all these trees that have been taken down?
Just before I answer that, I will say that our planning rationale dealt with that question about 5124 and how that ties to the criteria for consents. We referred to the 5312 provision in our report to connect all those dots. So anyways, that issue I think has been taken care of through the discussion just moments ago. So as for the question about the trees, surprisingly, I just found out about that as well today. And I'm a little bit sheepish about that because I am representing the application. As I said earlier, I stepped in for a colleague and I spoke with her as well. And fortunately, she didn't know about it either. We were relying on the strength of the tree information report when we filed our application and understood what those recommendations were. And we were prepared to accept the condition as recommended by staff for the updated TIR as a condition. And we're hoping that things would go smoothly tonight with those conditions because they all make sense to me and we're quite prepared with those. So it came as a bit of a surprise when I had the opportunity to read Ms. Wilson's Community Association letter to learn that those trees had been removed. Unfortunately, I can't comment any more than that, but disappointed to hear that.
All right, as are we, Mr. Pence. Okay, so any questions from committee members on either the consent? Okay, go ahead, Ms. Willis.
Question for Ms. Young. I don't know if it really bears much. Well, I won't say that. My question is what recourse the city has when somebody cuts trees down without a permit in this instance. When you say that it's a bylaw infraction notice, what could happen as a result of that?
We will be proceeding quite likely with charges. I can't really say exactly how that's going to go, but it certainly could be to the applicant as well as whoever it was that removed the trees. So if Ms. Wilson has more information on that, then I would hope she would send it to me. Yeah, so I mean, it's under investigation, but yes, I would say definitely charges are likely, and with the revised conditions, they will focus more on tree planting and the collection of securities for planting to ensure that it actually happens, given that they won't be needing a permit at this point. So mostly it will be a financial.
So that's what I was getting at, was whether or not it was financial compensation based on the estimated value of the trees that were cut, or what. There's a formula that's used.
There is a formula for private trees. So for any tree over 50 centimeters in diameter, which this honey locust was, it is 3-to-1 compensation. And I have to check. I believe this spruce was private as well, but it was smaller. So that would be 2-for-1. So it would be 5 trees, but that will be in addition to charges.
And the trees that are required, are they to be of a certain caliper or diameter at planting?
Yeah, under the bylaw, the minimum required tree size is 50 millimeter caliper. So it is a relatively small tree size. So, I mean, we'll work on that with the applicant if that can be increased. Because it certainly is a huge impact on this lot. So, yeah, we will work on that through this condition for the tree planting plan.
And so you said that there's compensation, but there's also charges. What does that mean?
That would have to go to court. Like we would charge under part 3, and that would need to be, it would be under the judge's discretion what charges it would be.
Thank you for your answer.
All right, thank you, Ms. Young, for that. Okay, so I was just trying to wrap up to make sure nobody had any more questions for Ms. Wilson, but I see Ms. Wilson, your hand is up.
Yes, I just wanted to say that there's somebody else that wanted to speak. Her name is Gwyneth Davidson. She's in here.
Yes. Yes, I was actually trying to wrap up with you so I can get on to the, so no, it's true. I just like to give the members of the committee a chance to ask questions of you as well. So
one other thing that we were told is that the application can be denied because the trees were taken down too. So anyway, thank you.
Sorry, what's your source for that?
Oh, I'll have to think of that. I've had too many things today. Jill, anyway, we'll think about it and I'll let you know.
All right, thank you. Okay, so so yes, Ms. Gwyneth Davidson is the next person. I understand you also have a presentation.
Madam Chair, I do not see Ms. Davidson on the call, but we do have a Maureen Knox.
Maureen Knox, Ms. Knox, did you want to come forward? Ms. Knox. I'm just waiting. Is there an issue? We're having a problem bringing.
Yes. Am I unmuted now?
You're unmuted now. I have
Thank
a question before you start, though. Are
Yes.
you representing Ms. Davidson?
My name is Davidson, but I'm at my stained glass class. I've been listening to all the presentations, and I'm sorry I'm not at home, so I had to use a friend's phone. But my name is Gwyneth Davidson. I live at 95 St. Clair, just across the street from 20 Cordova. And I wanted you to know, first of all, I drove around after the storm at the end of May, and we noted all of the trees and looked to see what was happening, my husband and I can tell you that the trees at 20 Cordova were just fine, thank you. There was nothing wrong with them. I'm sitting in my living room drinking my morning coffee with my daughter who's visiting, and we look out and we see this tree shaking, and then we look again and we see a backhoe. Now, I think the only purpose anyone would use a backhoe at a tree was to make it look like it had been damaged in the storm. But I can attest that it was a fully healthy tree before the storm and after the storm, as will my husband and my daughter. I'm very upset with what's going on in our neighborhood. And it seems, I think that this is just another perfect example. The planning department, permissions, whatever of the city said that that tree on the corner should stay, and big surprise, it's gone. You know, this just happens far too much. I guess if we never were concerned or believed in climate change, I do think it's time to wake up and have a look around. I mean, it's all over the globe right now. And I think that never mind a fine and charges and getting a slap on the, on the wrist for doing this, I think that permission to develop this lot into 2 lots should just be denied, because these people are clearly doing whatever they want to do. It doesn't matter what the rules are. You and I are supposed to obey the rules. Why are they allowed to get away with this? I mean, a fine for those trees might be $100,000 each tree, $500,000. That's what they're really worth to our community. Not just, $100, $500, $1,000, $10,000. It's much, much more than that. And you know what? This is clearly a case where someone says, oh, I'm going to do what I want to do. And then it's, the case of, oh, I'm not going to ask permission. I'll just apologize and say I'm sorry. And with the profits that are being made by all of this, and if you don't mind, I'd like to go on to one other point. Ms. Willis talked about another development where they were looking at 51% and 49%. If you check the bylaws, the zoning for, sorry, not bylaws, the zoning for this area is no footprint bigger than 45%. And there's a very good reason for that. That reason is the fact that we do not possess storm sewers. So we need to have ground available to absorb. We've already had floods in City View.
Ms. Davidson, just, okay. So I can appreciate that, that you have a lot of concerns, and so we do. So do we, by the way. You know, this is not something we like to hear that's happened at all. I think what Ms. Willis was referring to was actually a different zoning provision. It didn't have to do with lot coverage. It actually had to do with the severance size. So there's, anyway, I'm not going to go into it, but I think.
Well, in any case, I'm still very concerned because all of these new houses that are being put up and sold for $1.5 million or more are taking up much more than 45%, and their storm sewers are being connected to our clay 1950, 1960 sanitary sewers, with the result that you would expect. You know, and this is just going on and on. I have been watching this now for several years, and I'm just so discouraged. You know, is there nobody there listening? That's, you know, I hope you are listening, because this has got to end, and people are going to go on knocking down trees with backhoes and saws, you know, because they get away with it. And the only way is to stop them is to not let them get away with it. And that's my recommendation.
So, Ms. Davidson, there's a few initiatives that the city is undertaking right now, which speaks to things like an infrastructure master plan. And they're also have already begun the review of their zoning bylaw. These are great initiatives to get involved in and to really have your concerns voiced, so that they have an opportunity to really talk to the City View residents and address some of those concerns, such as the storm sewers. We know about those, but it's really through the infrastructure master plan. I think that's best looked at. So I know Ms. Wilson and Ms. Pratt know a lot about that. So I would encourage you to get involved with those ladies and to you know, just make sure you get involved.
Thank you. I have, and I will. And I really appreciate the hard work they keep doing for all the people who live in our community. I don't think they get enough. I was going to say kudos. They certainly aren't paid. That was all volunteer work from people who are, you know, mindful that we want there to be a comfortable place to live, not just for me and you, not just for my children, but for my grandchildren and great grandchildren. And right now it doesn't look very good. And I'm really urge, you know, the committee of variance to say, I'm sorry, you break the laws. You don't just get a little tap on the wrist. You don't get to put 2 houses on that lot. Put a nice family home, you know, and I'm sorry, you can't make your profit of millions of dollars. Too bad for you. You broke the rules. You pay the consequence. You know, anyway, thank you for listening to me. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Ms. Davidson. Is there any members of the panel who have questions for Ms. Davidson before she goes? No? All right. Thank you, Ms. Davidson, for your time this evening. Ms. Wilson,
thank you for yours. Thank you for yours. Okay. Good evening.
Good evening. Ms. Wilson, I wanted to make a last call so that we can wrap up the public hearing portion. So before I go to you, I'm just gonna ask if there's anybody else in the audience who would like to come forward and speak to either the consent or the minor variance application, or both. All right, not seeing anybody then, Ms. Wilson, I'm going to give you a last minute.
Okay, I just found that where we found that thing about the committee of adjustment.
Okay, where is that?
It's actually, and of course, I'm going to refer to the new official plan. Section 4.8.2 of the new official plan provides strong direction to maintain the urban forest canopy and its ecosystem services during the intensification, noting when considering the impacts of it on individual trees, planning and development decisions, including committee of adjustment decisions, shall give priority to the retention and protection of large, healthy trees over the replacement plantings and compensation. Further, that the city and the committee of adjustment may refuse a development application where it deems the loss of a tree or trees are avoidable. So
Fortunate thing there is that I think with the trees gone, so the intent is that the committee has that power, of course, to make sure that those trees are retained. In this case, they're already gone. So I don't know that provision applies. But all right, so thank you for that though, Ms. Wilson. I do appreciate you bringing that forward and for all of your good comments and your good homework as you always do. What I'd like to do next would actually be go to get Ms. Young to read into the record the 2 conditions that we need to add. Mr. White, you got questions for speakers or?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. I just, I'm agreeing with a lot of what I'm hearing from the community group tonight. I just want a question from Ms. Wilson. She refers in her in the presentation and the material that they provided to us, a reference to the new official plan and basically and essentially saying the new official plan should not be considered until such time as required new official plan is approved by the province and secondary plans and new zoning bylaws are enacted. I wonder if she could remind me where that comes from again. I believe there was some correspondence or something that the community group received, and I wonder if I could just get an indication of where that came from, because I mean, quite significant comment.
that was a clip that we sent to you guys. It was from Councillor Egley.
You know, they told everybody.
All right, sorry. So Ms. Davidson, I'm sorry, I'm just going to let this discussion end, but as far as I'm concerned, I think the public hearing portion is just about closed at this point. So Ms. Wilson, just because you're answering a question from Mr. White, that discussion can continue because I think that's fair. So you're telling us that Councillor Eglinton was the one who had the wording that provided you with the wording?
Well, Councillor Egley, there's a clip that we sent to you. It was right, what was it from? It was right after the official plan was approved by the city, and there was a question period. And Councillor Egley asked Steve Willis, and Steve Willis came back and gave an answer saying that until the province approved it and until the secondary plans were in place, that nothing would happen. So I can send you that clip again if you like it, but it's a clip that we sent to you about Councillor Egley probably about 10 things ago, 10 applications.
Oh, no, I remember it actually. I remember hearing it. So yes. Okay, so thank you. I think I still have it actually. Mr. White?
Madam Chair, I wonder in light of that, if we could perhaps receive something from staff with respect to the comment, because it is coming up on virtually every application that we see in this neighborhood. I just wonder if we could get some clarification from staff at some point on that comment.
So we can ask. All right. So Ms. Sclazero, if you wouldn't mind answering that, but you know what I think we should do, Mr. White? We should actually add that to a committee of the whole. Get some clarification in terms, get maybe legal services to address that for us at a committee of the whole application, so we truly understand what's applicable and not.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I believe this is rather urgent, so I'm not sure that, at least for me, I'd like to wait until such time as we deal with it there. I wonder if we could put a specific request in for clarification on that as soon as
possible. That's a good idea. That would be for Mr. Garnett. So if you could take note, please, that we would like to have, and I think, Mr. White, would you be okay with us actually using exactly the wording that we get from the community association? So the wording that we get from the staff report and the comments that we get from the community association, have the legal services come back to us with that, with sort of, you know.
Not a problem. That's exactly what I suggest.
Okay, all right. Mr. Garnett, can we get you to do that, please?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'll submit that request.
All right, thank you. And then we'll have that distributed to all of the members and all of the panels, so everybody understands how that is intended to be interpreted going forward. Okay, and we can share it with the community associations, I would hope. Okay, what else any other questions then, Mr. White, for Ms. Wilson or any other speakers? Okay, can we go to Ms. Young then at this point and have you read into the record the two conditions that you would propose in lieu of number 2?
Yep, okay. So number 1 is the owner / applicants shall prepare and submit a tree planting plan prepared to the satisfaction of the general manager of planning, real estate, and economic development, or his or her designate, showing the locations of the specified number of compensation trees, minimum 50 millimeter caliber, required under the tree protection bylaw for trees 2 and 3, which were removed without permits.
All right.
Okay.
Questions from the panel on that condition? We're in agreement that we could apply it. All right. Okay. So the next one, please, Ms. Young.
Number 2 is the owner shall enter into an agreement with the city through a development agreement or letter of undertaking at the expense of the owners and to the satisfaction of the development review manager of the relevant branch within planning, real estate, and economic development, or his or her designate, agreeing to prepare and implement the tree planting plan and to provide securities in the amount of $400 per tree for a period of 1 year from the issuance of the final occupancy permit. Compensation for any trees which cannot be planted on site will be paid to forestry services with the tree permit application.
Okay. Any questions from the panel on that? Are we good with that one? All right. So just for the record again, then, so we have number 1, we'll have number 2A and B, is that all right? And then 3 then becomes the one that's there now dealing with the capping of services and removing of the existing dwelling. Mr. Pence, are you okay with those 2 additional conditions as a replacement for number 2?
Those sound reasonable to me, given the circumstances.
Okay. On any other conditions, Mr. Pence, do you have any questions, comments?
No, I was generally satisfied with the conditions as they were. Some of the wording, I think, on some of them was a little bit awkward, but I think I understand that they're general standard conditions and we're prepared to accept them as they are.
All right. Okay, thank you. All right, then, what am I missing? Anything at this point to address? Are you ready to go to a vote? Ms. Wilson, the public portion is closed at this point, unfortunately.
I just, all I want to say is that I hope that what's said here tonight from different people that have come forward with tree information is not held against them. Because it takes a lot for the community, people in the community to come forward with these things publicly. So I hope that those things stay here and just for the protection of the people that are here. That's all I wanted to say, sorry.
So Ms. Wilson, I just remind you that we are being live streamed on YouTube and it is archived. So there's,
okay.
just as a reminder. That's where we are. Okay, any other questions from the panel? Ms. Willis?
Just a question for Ms. Young again. I hate hearing about these trees being cut and the action of whoever did it just makes it more difficult for everybody else because it's I think anyway, I'm sickened by it, but I'm wondering whether or not those conditions that you have, you're suggesting because of the circumstances, whether you have any discretion as to what the compensation would be, or whether that's covered by a bylaw that makes it very clear that it's a formula and there's nothing more you can do. You don't have the discretion to increase the caliber of the tree or increase the number of trees or anything like that. Is that correct?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. For private trees, it is very prescribed in the bylaw what the caliper size and the number of trees should be. Through the dealing with the applicant and presentation of charges and things like that, we may have more ability there. But for the actual application, I believe we're bound by the bylaw as it is.
And is there any desire or anything you know of on the part of the city with the strengthening of the tree bylaw and all the other provisions that those requirements might be upped in terms of the extent of compensation for mature trees being cut?
The only thing I'm aware of in terms of increasing that amount is there has been a motion to decrease the size of trees protected in the suburban area. So it would basically protect more trees, but it wouldn't necessarily change anything about the compensation. And I did forget to mention before, if they were city trees, then we would have the ability to evaluate the trees based on their actual value and their health. And it is usually a much higher number. It's really just because these are privately owned trees that they are currently privately owned trees. It looked like the spruce tree would have become a city tree with the corner lot or the sight line, the sight triangle. But as it stands, I don't think we have any ability to make changes right now. I mean, I could clarify that with somebody else, but in terms of this hearing tonight, unfortunately, I didn't really have time to prepare for that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Young. In fact, that sounds really accurate, because otherwise that would give us too much leeway. I think that's what the court process is for. So it makes sense that we are a little limited in terms of what we can do here. But I agree with Ms. Willis. Man, it is you really want to do more than just the standard same old, because those pictures were very compelling about the size of those trees and the health of those trees that we heard about. So, all right. So, are we ready though to go to a vote on the consent application? All right. So, on the question of the consent, then all those in favor? All right, so for the record, we have 3 members that are in support, with Member White dissenting. Mr. White, would you like to give your reasons? Oh, Mr. White, you're on mute.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll also be dissenting on the, assuming that it won't be approved or will be approved. I'll also be dissenting on the minor variance application, so I'll address both those issues. As you're well aware, I've consistently been non-supportive of these types of applications in this community. The long-established zoning bylaw provisions for lot width and lot area were imposed in the 1960s by the former municipality. They allowed for a significant amount of limited infill intensification in this area, which is based on, which has traditionally been a subdivision that is based on 30-meter frontage land holdings, and the provisions of the zoning bylaw, which are still in effect today and have not changed significantly since 1962, allowed for a limited amount of infill, but certainly not based on the type of minor variances with respect to lot width and lot area that we're seeing in these applications. I'm glad to hear that the community agreed with my suggestion with respect to the possibility of fronting the units or requiring the units to be fronted on the separate streets. I think that might have been one way to mitigate the impact of the limited frontages that are being proposed by the application. But under the circumstances, I'm not able to support either the consent or the minor variances. I think I'm not satisfied that the extent of the variances proposed are minor, nor is the scale of development that's being permitted desirable and appropriate for this community based on the current zoning intent and purpose of the current zoning bylaw regulations. In my opinion, the variances being sought are not consistent with the general purpose and intent of the zoning bylaw. And these were clearly intended to place greater limits on the pace and character of residential infill that is currently being accomplished by the approval of these applications. In conclusion, I would just suggest that there's a necessity, as I mentioned before, for a comprehensive review of zoning bylaw provisions in this community based on a new official plan, and in fact, the old official plan that's in existence. It's long overdue that some comprehensive review of zoning take place in this area. And just in conclusion, I won't be supporting this application.
All right, thank you, Mr. White. I just actually have a quick question then for Ms. Clarzero. Is there anything to prevent the developer with this consent then to, like, I'm trying to figure out if there's anything to prohibit the ability to have a house fronting on Cordova? I'm actually thinking that's maybe something that can be done. I don't think they would need, so all we have is a minor variance for lot width and lot area. Hence the reason why we can't compel the applicant to give us plans, because there's no requirement for minor variance to any other zoning provision. But because of that, does it not give, and I'm going to get an answer from Ms. Clarzero first, does it not give the developer the opportunity to actually front if they want to then when they come in with their proposal?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yep, there's no reason why the why the new building for the, pardon me, there's no reason why the new build on the corner lot can't front onto Cordova. The lot lines don't change. The determination of the yards and the lot lines don't change with the relocation of the entrance. So the front lot line would still be on Lotta. The corner side yard and corner side lot line would be on Cordova. So it would just be a matter of I don't want to say redesigning, because the plans that were submitted were demonstrative and I didn't consider them as part of my review. So there's nothing prohibiting them from designing the dwelling for the corner lot such that it fronts onto Cordova. The only limit would be the distance for the private approach from the corner, but that's addressed under the private approach bylaw.
All right, thank you for that. I guess I'm just thinking that Mr. Pence maybe you can take that back to the owners and see whether or not they would do it. So Mr. White, are you about to correct me maybe?
No, I'm just to suggest, Madam Chair, there's also no reason why the committee cannot impose that as a condition in order to accommodate what I consider to be a desirable planning outcome for this property.
Okay, I think unless the other members have changed their minds, I think we're what I was trying to get at with that is that it's still possible to do, and it's still, unless Ms. Willis and Mr. Hindle want to revisit the question of adding it as a condition. Mr. Hindle?
Yeah, I don't think I would be in a position to change my opinion. I think in this case that we've been given no planning rationale as to why it would be required and no basis as to why it would be required. And I understand it's a personal preference to many, but in this case, there's no zoning or kind of baseline that would even encourage us in this case to do it that way. So I would tend to leave that condition out.
Ms. Willis?
I concur with what Mr. Hindle has said.
All right, thank you. But in that case, though, Mr. Pence, please take that back to the landowners, your applicants, and invite them to talk to maybe the community association about what might be more desirable from their standpoint. So anyway, I'll leave that with you at this point. So your application for consent is approved. On the application for minor variance, all those in favor? I know I have Mr. White already dissenting. All right. So same thing for the record, 3 members approving and a dissent for the reasons given by Mr. White. So Mr. Pence, I think that wraps up your application for this evening.
Well, thank you very much. And I will take that back to our clients and discuss some of the discussion that was had here tonight and see what their interest is in trying to front onto Cordova.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much and good luck then.
Okay, thank you very much. Good night.
Good evening. So our last application for tonight is 75 Aylan, looking for Ms. Belfi.
Good evening.
Good evening, Ms. Belfi. So I need to read to you on the statutory declaration. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted first at the property to which the applicant applies, that it was there for the prescribed number of days before the hearing, that it was clearly visible and legible for the entirety of that time? Do you either swear or affirm that to be true?
Swear.
All right, thank you very much. With that, then
could I just say one thing? I am having some unstable internet connections periodically. I have been on the call since 6:30, but if I freeze, I come back probably within a second. Just wanted to let you know.
I've been having the same thing this evening.
Okay, good.
So don't worry. Okay, so a brief presentation, please.
Yes, I will try and keep it under 5 minutes as requested. If the first slide could be put up, please. This is the location plan. The property is outlined in red on this slide, and it's located in a diverse neighborhood with single and semi-detached homes of different ages, styles, heights, and size. It's within a 5 to 8 minute walk to the corridor designated lands along Richmond Road and the new Sherbourne LRT station shown with an X on this slide. The next slide, please. This is the draft strata survey plan showing the ground floor and second floor parts. The lot is 18.2 meters wide and quite deep at 50.9 meters. The purpose of the severances is to allow 2 long semi-detached buildings on this lot for a total of 4 dwelling units. The front lots are shown in green on the right-hand side of your screen, and the rear lots are shown in pink. Easements and rights-of-way have been requested for access, maintenance, and drainage purposes. The next slide, please. The homes have been designed to fit the diverse context of the neighborhood. Rather than being mirror images of each other, each home has a different look due to the roof designs, windows, and cladding placement. All 4 homes share a single driveway that runs between the 2 buildings and leads to the main entrances of the rear units and the carport parking located behind the front units. Now the next slide, please. The homes will be 2 stories in height as shown in the top 2 drawings. This is in accordance with the current official plan policies requiring a minimum of 2 stories in neighborhoods within the inner urban transect. The lot slopes from the front to the back, which allows the rear units to have a walkout basement as shown on the bottom 2 drawings. The rear units will have 15-meter deep backyards and a covered at-grade patio for their outdoor amenity area. The front units will have a rooftop patio set back from the side and front walls and with barrier rails for their outdoor amenity area. Each home will provide what the official plan calls missing middle housing with its 3-bedroom ground-oriented design. Next slide, please. This is the side elevation of both the northern and southern homes. One parking space is per unit is provided in the carports, which are located at about the midpoint of these side elevations. The end and sides of each carport will be enclosed with a 6-foot 10-inch high opaque fence and will be built with sound barrier materials to protect the privacy of the adjacent properties and limit noise. The carports will also be equipped with EV charging capability for electric vehicles and will be heavily marketed as such. The windows on the side elevations have been sized and placed to limit overlook. The ground floor windows are narrow to let some light into the home while limiting overlook onto the neighbor's property. The second floor side windows are clear story windows and will be placed at about a 7-foot height to allow light into the rooms, but no overlook. Next slide, please. This is the site plan for the property showing the ground floor of each home and the driveway between them. The lot area for each semi-detached building exceeds the minimum requirement. The front yard setback conforms with the 6-meter zoning requirement and is compatible with the front yards of the adjacent homes that you can see to the top and bottom of this site plan. The 15-meter rear yard exceeds the 7.5-meter zoning requirement, and the setback of the northern and southern side walls will conform with the 1.2-meter zoning requirement. The grading and homes will be designed so that the rooftop drainage is directed to the shared driveway between the semi-detached homes, and the side yard drainage will be contained on site and not directed to the neighbors. The requested variances are shown by the yellow boxes. There has been a minor variance request for lot and pole width. It will still allow room for these homes, which are 6 meters wide, and a 3-meter driveway with individual services running through the driveway. The northern and southern side yard variance is only for the setback, the carport retaining wall. And as I said previously, to minimize impact of the carport, a tall opaque fence built of sound barrier material will be installed. The side yard between the two rear units will each be 0.6 meters, thereby providing a 1.2 meter space between the units. Rights of way have been requested for access and maintenance purposes through this area. The building height variance is only for the southern semi-detached home, as the northern block conforms with the 8-meter building height. The variance is required due to the peaked roof of the southern unit and the slope of the land from the front to the back. The variance will allow the homes to have a different street elevation from the northern semi-detached and will contribute to the diverse architectural character in this neighborhood. The next slide, please. A sun shadow study for the growing season was prepared to address concerns about impacts on trees and bushes along the side lot line. As shown on this slide, through May, June, and August, there's going to be afternoon sun all along the property line on the north and actually on the south as well. The requested side yard variance will not impact the sunlight on the adjacent home at 71 Allen, as it is for the retaining wall only. The property at 71 Allen, which is to the north, will receive sun in their side yard and rear yard in the late morning and all afternoon. Since the minor variance is not being requested for building height for the northern semi-detached home, these results would be found for any redevelopment on the property. The next slide, please. The proposal is being examined in terms of the 4 tests of a minor variance. We believe the requested variances are minor in nature. As discussed, the impacts have been limited through the site and building design and limiting overlook into the neighbor's property with the size and placement of the windows, the opaque sound barrier fencing, and the rooftop patio setbacks. The requested variances are desirable for the appropriate development of the lands. The homes are of a built form, scale, and height that do not dominate the street. The streetscape will be improved with reduction in the driveway width from a wide double driveway that exists now to a single driveway. Parking will be hidden from view behind the front units, and new trees will be planted in the front yard to improve the streetscape and add to the canopy cover. The variances will allow the construction of 4 units of missing middle housing in this mature neighborhood close to the LRT transit. The variances conform to the general intent of the zoning bylaw. The lots exceed the lot area requirement and conform or exceed to the front and rear yard requirements. The side yard variances are for the carport setback only and between the two rear semi-detached homes. The northern dwelling conforms with the maximum building height, and the variance for the southern homes were requested to allow a peaked roof, which adds to the diversity of the streetscape. The variances conform to the general intent of the official plan. They will allow compatible, modest intensification on this lot as supported in the old and new official plan. The new homes will make efficient use of existing infrastructure and services, and it will add new accommodation for larger households in this existing mature neighborhood. It's located within a short walking distance of the Richmond Road corridor and the LRT, and will contribute to creating a livable, diverse 15-minute neighborhood as encouraged in the official plan. In conclusion, the approval of the minor variance and severance applications is in accordance with Council's growth and housing strategy for existing neighborhoods and provides new housing that blends with the neighborhood. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Ms. Belfi. Questions from the panel? All right, I don't know whether it's the hour or whether it's all of the material that we've had a chance to look at, but all right, if there's no questions then from the panel members, I'm going to go to our speakers list. And I'd like to start with Susan Glass, representative for the Woodruff North Community Association.
Hi, I would be glad to start tonight, but I've discussed it with Michael, who is the next door neighbor. And I'm going to ask Michael to go first, if that's fine with you, and I'll follow up after him.
All right, that's fine. Mr. Bazell.
Hi, hopefully you can hear me. Thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing me to speak. I'm a little out of my wheelhouse when it comes to zoning bylaws, but I have lived in
We lost Mr. Bazell?
I think so.
Okay. Ms. Glass, I think I'm going to ask you to go.
Madam Chair, I'm going to go first. Thank you. And committee members, thank you. And I have a few photographs that I had sent in that I'd like to bring onto the screen. Okay, so that's the first one. And this is the existing property on the left and the house to the south. And I wanted to bring attention to the elevation of the two front lawns because oh, Michael, I see that you're back.
I am, sorry.
Do you want to go first or shall I continue now? Maybe. I'll just continue and
sure.
Follow up then.
Yeah.
So something I wanted to speak to the planner about is the elevation has been artificially raised on the existing house at 75 Allen. And I just wanted to confirm that the new house is going to be on equal ground with the two abutting houses rather than keeping that elevation. And the reason it's an issue for me as development officer, I've seen it in our neighborhood where a house has artificially raised their property in that way, and it's caused a lot of water damage on the other side. So I would just like to start fresh with this property, and I'd like to ask the planner, I'm so sorry, I don't know your name, what the plan is for the construction of the building. So that's one question I have, but if I just keep going with that to the next slide. So the next question I have is about this tree. I'm not exactly sure of what the trunk diameter is, but I wondered what the plan is for that tree and if there is a root protection plan for that tree, which is just on the other side of the property line north of 75 Allen. Second question, and then if you show the next slide, please. So this slide is taken from the 75 Aylan property looking toward the house to the north. And you can see that this bedroom window in that house is going to be very close to that carport that's going to be constructed very close to that fence, which is the lot line. What's being proposed for where the carport is a 0.15 meter side yard. And really, in my limited experience with development in my neighborhood, I have never seen a request for a 0.15 meter side yard. And it's spoken of it's just where the carport is, but unfortunately, just where the carport is where the bedroom window is. And so there's going to be a wall constructed. There will be cars parked right inside it. And granted, it'll be of an opaque material, but it's so close to the lot line. And I understand that it's a 1.2 meter side yard where there isn't a carport. But the fact of the carport is that it's right very close to where the northerly house and the southerly house come closer to the lot line. So in my mind, that's really problematic in terms of noise, in terms of exhaust, even though, and in terms of constructing a wall, whether it's a wall that's a house or a wall that's a carport, effectively, there's going to be a wall constructed just 0.15 meters from the lot line. And obviously there's going to be no possibility of anyone walking through that area. It's about as wide as a hand. So I find that really an extraordinary request. I do find that that in terms of the spirit of the intent of the bylaw and why there is a side yard requirement in the bylaws, I find this is really not respecting the intent and purpose of the bylaw in terms of side yard. And to say that it's really only the carport, except that blocks the entire passage of the side yard in terms of a person passing through from front to back, or of course for drainage. So those were three issues that I would like addressed. And the other thing I'd like to mention is that in those beautiful photographs, or not photographs, but drawings of the proposed house, the architect is clearly very creative. I would love to see the architect be creative in figuring out something in terms of this carport. And the drawings that we see show us a spacious surround to those houses, which in fact isn't the case. They are very, very close with that 0.15 meter side yard. So I'll stop there and pass it over to Michael, who is the next door neighbor.
What I'd like to do is actually address a few of your points. I took some notes. We'll get some answers, and then let maybe the committee members, maybe they may have some questions for you. So on the artificial grading of the lot, so it was very compelling photograph. Ms. Belfie, do you know anything about the history of that lot? Do you know if that was actually raised? Is the intent to bring it back down in any way, or what's being planned for the grading and drainage of that site? Oh, you're on mute. Wait, you're still on mute. Still on mute for whatever reason. Can't hear you. To the coordinator, have we lost Ms. Belfie completely? Is she?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have.
Okay. All right. In which case, we will go to Mr. Bazell at this point and hear your comments, and we'll come back to Ms. Belfie.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I don't know how much I lost at the beginning. I just want to thank you for allowing me to speak, and I'll just reiterate, I'm a little out of my wheelhouse when it comes to the zoning bylaws. Trying to learn quickly. We've lived in this house at 71 Aylen for almost 33 years, and as I was saying, I never expected to have to defend or have to raise the issue of a house being built 5.8 inches from my lot line. That's outside my bedroom windows. I have a bedroom window upstairs that Susan has shown, and there's 2 lower ones as well. So I'm a little concerned at having this viewing platform into the bedroom windows. I know there's an opaque fence there, but as we all know, fences get replaced, and
Oh, I lost Mr. Bozell again. Ask him to go off camera the next time he comes back. Maybe that'll help.
Oh, that's a good idea.
All right, so Ms. Belfi, then we're going to go back to you and you were going to tell me a little bit about the grading and drainage and what's being proposed for the site.
I've spoken with our civil engineer who has been looking at it, and the water from the rooftop buildings will be, as I was saying, will be directed to the shared driveway, and that the grading at the front will be done so that it grades to the street. It won't be draining onto the side property lines, to the side neighbors. In terms of the bedroom, we took a lot of consideration of how to do that so that the neighbors would not be affected. And so that was why we came up with having a fence around enclosing the carport around the sides and the back. The tallest we're allowed to do under the zoning bylaw is 6 feet 10 inches, and they're proposing to make it out of sound barrier material. We discussed that just recently to limit noise. The opaqueness will stop any headlights that would be going through, and the height will certainly mean that nobody's going to be looking over into the neighbor's property. The other comment that had come up was about walking, and because this is a long semi-detached, and as I was showing, the front units, their property actually ends in the middle of the carport, and so they do not need to get to the backyard. The rear units, if they need to get to the backyard, there is space between the 2 rear units to access their backyard, so they don't have to go on the outside. They can get through it on the interior yard.
And what is that width, Ms. Belfi?
We've asked that each unit has 0.6 of a meter, and so that between the 2 of them, it'll be 1.2 meters. And we've also requested rights of way so that each unit can access and use both that 1.2 meters.
Okay, good. That does address that issue. There was a picture of a tree that Ms. Glass had shown us to be returned.
And I believe she was saying that tree is actually on the neighbor's property, so that that they will have to take care not to damage it. I think that was also in the report from the forester about having coordination with the neighbor about protecting trees, and that certainly is the intent along the property line.
Okay, so all right, and I think the last one was no, I think we did actually address all of that. Ms. Glass, can you tell me a little bit more about that tree and the location and your concern, though?
Mm-hmm. I'll just take down my hand. Yes, my concern is that I've seen in other instances where there is actually a root protection plan made, because the roots of that tree, given it's right on the property line, but actually on the other side, the roots go into the property of 75 Aylen, and I've seen it before, that a plan is made so that the roots of the tree are protected in the digging and the construction. So I wanted something more specific than watching out for the trees and hedges. Because I've seen those specific plans be incorporated. It's a beautiful tree. It happens to be leaning towards 75 Allen, and so I don't know how it's going to be dealt with.
All right, so I'm going to ask Ms. Young if she can come back. She's our forestry services representative. Ms. Young, have you had a chance to look at this site? Do you know what tree Ms. Glass is referring to? Okay.
I believe so.
Remind me.
Yeah, it's not actually included in the plan, if I'm reading this correctly. So I'm guessing that it's not a protected tree, like it would be under 30 centimeters in diameter. That's something that will need to be confirmed, but the arborist is supposed to include any trees, any protected trees, even on adjacent properties that would be impacted. And it's not on here, so I'm just assuming that it's not protected. But it is up to the applicant to ensure, even if it's not protected under the bylaw, they don't have the right to remove it or damage it. So they need to, it's a civil issue, essentially. They need to work with the neighbor and the owner of the tree to protect it.
I see.
All right, thank you, Ms. Young. All right, Mr. Oh.
If I could just go back to the response to my question about starting from ground zero in the construction, rather than starting with that artificially elevated front yard. I don't think that was I don't think there was any.
No, and so we do have a condition that they need to get to the site. And let me see if I can find it. But there's a condition that deals with grading and drainage. Whether they're bringing it back down to the other height is a whole other question. But the reality is that there has to be a stormwater management plan. There has to be, let's see, what else have they got? I'm sure they must have a grading and drainage plan. Yes, 2 conditions, as a matter of fact, that deal with that whole water issue.
I'm also interested in the height of the house. Is it measured from that artificially elevated height that's a higher front lawn than the abutting neighbors?
Yes, because that would be the grade. That would be at grade.
Exactly.
So it's not.
So
Yeah.
Is there a way to write that in as a condition that the house is built at the same grade as the next door neighbors? Because
we can't do that. We can't do that, Ms. Glass. So it's whatever the grading and drainage plan dictates, whatever that grade is, that's what we start from.
Okay. Okay. So, Michael, you haven't had a chance to speak yet. Mm-hmm.
So, Mr. Mazel, we were just wondering if you might want to maybe go off camera and make sure we don't lose you.
I will do that.
All right. Go ahead,
Okay.
then.
So what I wanted to say, and I'm sorry I've been cutting in and out, but the way I understand, the request for the development next door is they're moving from 3 meter minimum, total minimum setback for side yards to 0.75, and then a side yard from a 1.2 meter to a 0.15 meter. That's a 95% decrease on the side yard setback, yet they're still building to the maximum height of 8 meters. So the sun shade scenario that they presented for the 3 months of high sun is not quite accurate, and it also means, unfortunately for my yard, for the rest of the year, it's in shade. I'm also concerned in that 1.2 meter setback or the 0.15 meter setback. They have there's a fireplace in the front unit. Is that a gas fireplace with the vents protruding into the 1.2? For my yard, that's right where my patio, where my hot tub, everything is there. My major concern, though, like I said, is the 0.15 setback with a viewing platform into my bedroom windows. Now, I've nowhere in this neighborhood are cars parked perpendicular to the lot line. You mentioned, or the planner or the developer mentioned the water drain off from the roof would go to the driveways. If you look at what they presented, the driveways have been raised and then sloped down to the road. Aylan Avenue slopes down to the Ottawa River. So basically, I've got 4 roofs going down that driveway and then coming into my driveway in winter and in rainfall. I've lived here 33 years. I know how the water runs down that road. I'm also concerned about a couple of our neighbors here, unfortunately, are not available tonight to speak, but they wanted me to reiterate the concern of, in this neighborhood, all the new development that's just been done in the last 2 years, everybody has at least 2 parking spots. There's a garage, a driveway. They've maintained the side yard setback. So this is the one development in this neighborhood that is a very unique development. They did present to the community 2.5 years ago. Yes, the unique street front was acknowledged, but nothing of the remaining development did the community endorse. We all had concerns with the single driveway, emergency vehicle access to the rear units, the height, the setbacks. It is just what's being proposed is not in keeping with this neighborhood and with this community. Most people in this neighborhood have at least 2 cars. What they're proposing are 3-bedroom units, so there's going to be 2 cars per unit. I'm also concerned about the setback, the increased height. It deprives the properties of light and privacy. There's a lack of open space. What's being built is a large footprint, which is inconsistent with the neighborhood. I think as Susan had mentioned, the raised front yard, you can, if you remove the dirt, you'll see there's 2 steps and a walkway under the dirt. So my concern is, are you building, is it 8 meters from 2 feet up already? The reduced setback, what else? Like I said, all the new developments in the neighborhood, all respect the setbacks and parking. I'm concerned about air conditioning, furnace vents, the fireplace in that 1.2 or that 0.15 setback. I think, the drainage, I do have concerns with drainage, parking, the loss of sunlight to my property. That's the north side of the lot. My south side of my house will lose all sunlight. The bedroom windows will be done. I submitted 6 photos there. If you want to go through them, I can just walk you through what my concerns are with the first one. There is what Susan had highlighted, how the front yard has been artificially raised, and you can see Aylan Avenue in front. That Aylan Avenue is the level most of the houses are. I also want to note that in the builder's plan submitted by Sheen Architects, they identify my house and the house that you see in that picture as 2-story houses. They're clearly 1 story. So that's what I wanted to point out there. Slide 2, what I wanted to highlight there is, that's my side yard right now. Where you see the bird feeder, just beyond that fence is where, 5.8 inches away, you're going to see a wall that's, I think the floor of the raised parking spot will be about 4 feet off the ground. And then there's proposing another 7 feet. So basically I'm going to have a solid wall there, destroying, and then the sunlight, of course, will be minimalized at all. So we can go to the slide 3. This is the backyard looking to the front. You can see right now, these are all hedges there. That sunlight will disappear. Where they're proposing, I'm standing at the end of what they're proposing to be the unit B in the back. So there'll be an 8-meter high wall right there, or even higher because it's a walkout basement, removing all sunlight from my backyard. So that's my concern there. We can go to slide 4. This is looking down the driveway. I know they mentioned there's currently a double driveway. There is, like most the older houses in the neighborhood all have double driveways. But this is the sunshade casting over right now. You'll see where you see the sunlight, that will be all eliminated, because if you look at what they submitted for footings for what they call the parking spot, to dig the footing, they're going to be digging, and the footing, the base of that raised parking spot will be right on the lot line. So you're going to be damaging all trees, all all routes in that system for that. And that's the slide that you're showing footings and basements. So I'm concerned of, you know, what's being lost there. If you go to slide 5, this is a closer picture of right on the left is 0.15 meters or 5.8 inches. That's where the wall will be, right there. So all that brush or all the plantings, the landscaping, and not to mention a wall 5.8 inches from the lot line. You can go to slide 6. This is looking out the same window that Susan had presented. That's the top of the shed and the rake. So right there will be a wall. It's, you know, to me, I think that goes against the intent of the zoning bylaws to do that to a neighbor, to build a wall right there. And unfortunately, right behind that opaque wall will be 4 cars. So you're going to hear the opening and closing or locking and unlocking. You're going to hear the idling of the cars because yes, they're going to put charging stations in, but how many people have electric cars right now? Very few. Yes, 20 years from now, it'll probably be everyone, but not right now. So right now you're going to have 4 cars starting, stopping, locking, unlocking. You're also going to have the snow removal from those things. There's an opening at the top. Will people throw their snow out the top of that? Who knows? Also on the plan, they show in that parking spot a storage unit for each unit. Given that's the only storage unit, I suspect there's going to be garbage cans, fuel for the lawnmower. So not only will there be noise pollution, there'll be, you know, fumes coming out of that area. And like I said, this is right outside my bedroom windows, the upper and lower bedroom windows. So I have concerns of that. And like I said, I've never seen 5.8 inches a setback. We can go to slide 7. This again, so showing, you can see the lot line there. There's the lot line that they've shown. I have a wire fence that I put through the hedges to keep the dog in, but that's not on the lot line. Unfortunately, when a tree came down, the developers damaged a lot of my hedge, which I'm in negotiations with them to rectify, and they've agreed to do that. So that's good. But all that to say, the part that juts out of my house, there's 3 windows there, and they face right onto that. If you can go to slide 8, I have concerns. This is, you know, the artistic rendering. All that greenery doesn't exist, and my house is right there. This is the carport that's jutting out. So right there, that viewing balcony is looking right into my bedroom windows. It's the cars. I mean, I have a major issue having a viewing platform into my bedroom windows. I can only say that my neighbors on the other side have reiterated that as well. And I don't see them on the line. And I know she's not online. She's not computer literate, so she's not online. And like I said, unfortunately, the other neighbors are away that would have supported her. I also just wanted to say that the window placement, I do have concerns. I know we did meet 2.5 years ago. The architect heard the comments from the neighborhood. They came back, I guess, a month and a half ago, not really changed. They say they've moved some of the windows around. It's hard to tell. But my feeling is that the car parking perpendicular to the lot line, you know, so you got headlights, you've got the noise. It's just not in keeping with this neighborhood. I do think, like I said, moving from, 3 meter side yard setbacks in total to 0.75 and a 1.2 setback to a 0.15. And also, what's to stop that 0.15 being the whole length, not just the width? Yes?
I'm going to give you another minute. Because you've had more than your 5 minutes, I think, at this point.
Oh, okay, perfect. Oh, thank you. Well, I guess the gist of what I want to say is, looking at your 4 tests of minor variance, I don't feel this development meets the 4 tests. The cumulative effects has an undue adverse impact, and it's not minor. I believe there's a negative impact on the ongoing. I think the submissions from the other members of the community support that clause, and I'm sure you've seen them. The projection in the side yard, I'm concerned about the air conditioning, the furnace vents, the fireplace, which the other members of the committee commented on earlier submissions about access to the backyard, the protrusion into the raised yard. you talk about, like I said, the water drainage from the roofs down onto the driveways, which float down or slope down to the road, will eventually go right into my driveway because I'm downhill from that. So I think, you know, your last impact is the request variance minor. I think given all the impact on the community, the drainage, the traffic, the parking, the reduced sunlight, the impact on the trees and the shrubbery, and not in keeping with the neighborhood, I don't think it's a minor variance. So that's basically what I want to say.
Thank you, Mr. Bazell. Any questions?
Could I also just say, I just went out and measured the tree that's in, and it's just over 30 centimeters. So I think your tree expert said if it's over 30, it has to be part of the plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's over 30.
I don't know. So, I mean, arborists do this every day. So I'm gonna, unless the tree is grown, maybe it was just under the wire. I don't know.
Well, I don't think they came into my yard to measure it. Put it that way.
But
they didn't.
They have nothing to gain by somehow not reflecting the right information. So I don't think we're going to question the tree information report too much. But okay, so we have a lot of things here that have been raised, concerns about the loss of sunlight, damage to the trees. We heard from Ms. Young that there's ways for that to be protected. So increased height invading privacy, not compatible with the form in the neighborhood, and then some questions about the one parking per unit not being sufficient. All right, Ms. Belfi, did you want to respond to any of that?
There were quite a few comments there. I tried to make notes so I could respond to them. I have been corresponding with Michael via email, going back and forth to answer a number of his questions and also to come up with solutions because it seemed as we went through, and can you still hear me?
Yes, you're back.
Oh, good, thank you.
We lost you just for a second.
Okay. And so in terms of the overlook into the bedrooms, we did spend a lot of time making sure that the windows were sized, they're narrow, they're tall, they're not large windows for overlook into the yards of the adjacent neighbors. In terms of the bedroom, we are putting up a 6-foot 10-inch fence, which is the tallest that the zoning will allow, so that the carport will not be a viewing platform. I don't know many people that are taller than 6 feet 10 inches, so it's not going to be a viewing platform. In order to mitigate things such as noise, like he was talking about cars and cars opening, the owner has agreed that he would make it out of the sound barrier material, so it'll be a sound fence, which will help to deaden and reduce the sound. In terms of the storage he was talking about, there is inside the carport on the back wall of each unit, on the walls of each unit, there is an enclosed storage area that will be for garbage and recycling and other things that people want to store there. So it has a roof, it has sides, it has doors. So that will all be enclosed in there. In terms of parking, we are meeting the parking requirements. There's a requirement for 1 parking space per unit. And it is really close to the new LRT Sherburne station that's just under construction. It'll be easy for somebody to walk there. Anybody who purchases this home will know there's only 1 parking spot. So it's sort of a self-selecting kind of thing. If you need 2 cars, you're not going to be buying one of these homes. I have spoken with the neighbor on the other side. I've spoken with her on the phone 3 times, and we've gone over a number of the details and a number of the questions that she had, and she seemed satisfied. She liked the protection of the fencing around the carport. What else was there? I guess, and then in terms of the parking being perpendicular, a number of the homes in this neighborhood, and particularly along this street, actually have their driveway that goes right up the side lot line and will lead to the parking in, there's like detached garages in the backyards, or they park in the side yard. And so there could, despite the fact that we've got 2 cars facing perpendicular, under the zoning bylaw, the current zoning bylaw, they could have driveways going up. You're not allowed to park in the front yard anymore. So the only place, if this property was to redevelop as something else, would be parking on the side or something in the rear yard. In terms of sunlight, the building that's being proposed at 8 meters and the setback of the actual walls of the building at 1.2 meters. This is, we've shown what would happen if there would be sunlight in the backyards, also in the side yards starting late morning. And that would happen under whatever was redeveloped and built at that spot. It's not because of this particular development, it's just, that's the way it would be. So I think I've addressed a number of his comments.
I think you did. I think you did, Ms. Belfin. All right, so I don't have, well, I have one person, but apparently she's not going to be joining us, but I'll make the call out. Chantal, come, is she's the coordinator? Do we have that person?
No, Madam Chair, we don't.
All right, okay, so just to finish up the public portion then, is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak either for or against the consent or minor variance applications or both? Now's your chance. No, Ms. Glass, I'm looking for new people at this point. So there's no one. Okay, so the public portion of the hearing is now closed. So we're going to go to the committee members to see whether or not you have any follow-on questions after the presentations by the speakers. Yes, Ms. Willis.
Sorry, my mute button is hidden. I actually wanted to, I could be either directed to Ms. Belfi or Mr. Buzzell, the neighbor. Is it okay to ask him a question?
Absolutely.
It looks like the applicant has tried to accommodate your concerns. One of the major ones being the sound and the visual intrusion that may result, that you perceive results from the carport and its location. And the solution that is being proposed is a 6 foot, 10 inch high sound attenuation barrier. And I'm just wondering whether in trying to mitigate some of your concerns, Mr. Buzzell, whether or not you'd actually prefer, because of the visual impact for your windows, whether you would prefer to have a lower noise attenuation and visual fence.
Thanks for the question. Just say, after 2.5 years of my objections to that carport there, it was earlier today that Ms. Balfour came up with this new proposed opaque wall. So that literally it's been hours with that solution after 2.5 years of me objecting to what's there. I did speak with Angela, one of the owners of Durabel, who's developed, they've developed many places on Leicester Avenue. They're building next door. He didn't realize the carport was only 5.8 inches from my lot line when I was chatting with him. And he said he would talk to the architect to try to mitigate that and see if they could change the plan. Now, like I said, nowhere in the city have I seen a development like that. I understand this architect, when he presented 2.5 years ago, he said he did one development like that in Mechanicsville, but that's it. So it's a very unique layout. I don't think it's in keeping with the neighborhood. And like I said, this being 5.8 inches from my lot line and outside my bedroom window, I oppose any structure there.
Excuse me, my question really was very specific about the height of the fence, whether or not the attempt to mitigate sound and visual intrusion makes it worse for you or better for you.
It's hard to say. I don't know what it's going to be like, because don't forget that's in addition to the 4 feet that the carport's raised from the ground level. So I don't know what that'll mean. But I also don't know what a shorter wall will mean. I mean, that'll be a viewing platform into the bedroom window. So I'm hesitant for that.
Just on that, I wanted, when you said viewing platform, I thought you were referring to the rooftop deck, not to.
No, I'm talking where the car is. So when you stand out of your car, if you look at climb over that little fence, you're going to look right into my bedroom windows.
The 6 foot 10-inch fence.
Well, if you stand on a box, I'm just, there's people out there, and that's the same concerns Allison on the other side had of the ability to people to just look into your windows. And like I said, I've been here 33 years. I don't have that now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for our speakers or for staff? Mr. Hendel.
Yeah, I just had a question for the applicant. You mentioned in looking at the art plan, there is a strata portion of the severance that's proposed. Could you just clarify exactly where that strata portion is and what it's working around?
Yes, it's actually 2 parts in the in the carport area. So if you were to look at the there are parts. I don't have a plan here to show you, but the point of it is to allow the cars to maneuver, to be able to drive in and then to drive back out. And so part of the cars, when they back out, could go under the onto the other piece of property underneath the second floor. And so we've had to create a strata to allow that there be sufficient room to move the cars and with the turning radius. We had our engineer do a turning radius study, and he identified these two areas at the front units on the inside of the unit, sort of just adjacent to the driveway. That's
okay. So the portion that's underneath that's technically kind of carported, but it's underneath the second story of the front units to allow for turning radius?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And then to confirm, I think it's pretty clear, but the only portion of construction that's proposed in the 0.15 meters from the lot line, that's just the fence and the retaining wall for the parking. However, the actual building structural portion, including the second story portion that's over the carport and creating that carport, that's all it's 1.2 meters setback from the side lot line.
She's frozen.
Yes, Ms. Kelly.
And we're back.
Oh, good. Thank you. The answer to your question is yes. If I can get that in quickly.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right. I think we can then go to a vote on. I'll call on the consent first, and then on the minor variances. So on the question of consent, all those in favor? All right, so for the record, 3 members are in support. I am dissenting, but it obviously passes, so it's granted. And my reasons are simply that I think that there's overdevelopment that's occurring on the site, and it's the same thing for the minor variances is going to be my vote as well. So on the question of the minor variances, all those in favor? All right, so same thing, the minor variance is granted, and I'm also dissenting on that because I think the overall impact is not minor, and that it is in fact overdevelopment on that site. All right, so with that though, Ms. Belfi, you are aware of all of the conditions. No issues with that. I should have probably had that discussion with you first, but you didn't raise it, so assuming we're good with it?
Yes, I am.
Okay, all right. Well, in that case, I don't think there's anything more to discuss on your application at this point. So anything else, Ms. Belfi, or we can?
No, there isn't. No, there isn't.
All right. Okay, well then good luck, and continue dialogue with the neighbors to I don't know, maybe improve things, even especially with the grading and drainage. Maybe have a chat with Ms. Glass and Mr. Bazel about that at some point. just to bring them up to speed. Otherwise, I think that's it. So I'm gonna wish everybody a good night then on this. I need a motion to adjourn, however, before we go any further. Oh, Mr. Hindle. And seconded by Mr. White. And so, as always, thank you to our committee staff. Thank you to our planning staff and our forester, Ms. Young, Mr. Scalzero. I am going to have to practice your name, Ms. Kelly. I can get. But thank you. We really appreciate all the support. We had great support from you three ladies this evening. So thanks so much for that. We would truly appreciate your expertise in helping us make decisions. So, thank you, Mr. Garnett, for coming in and chatting with